All right, good evening, everyone. Today's the Committee of the Whole meeting. It's 5:03 p.m. on March 1st, 2023. We are going to dedicate this to the budget. I believe we will be covering police and fire tonight. And what I want to do is I want to thank everybody for attending, first of all, because it is budget season. I'm sure everybody's going to have questions as far as the council. But I want to turn it over to the majority leader in our past finance chairman of the committee, Frank Miola. So I want Frank to kind of run this meeting tonight, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Committee of the Whole and Mr.
Mr.
President Pro
DeBrango's
Tem. Frankie DeBrango.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, colleagues, I'm assuming we're going to start with the police department budget. Is that correct?
Yes, so I'm not quite sure where the two chiefs are. I know they were aware of the meeting today, and Marcus is going to text them real quick.
Well, why don't you go over the summary, and if they show up later on for questions, we'll go from there. How's that sound?
Okay.
We'll start on page 24, the police department administration, and go ahead, Heather, you have the floor.
So there were quite a few changes this year in the org chart, is there every year with the police department. But I mean, their contract is settled, so that's really not an issue here. I don't know if there's any particular questions that you have. The budget's up quite a bit, just because they did have a contract settlement. Their retirement is up. I sent you all the retirement projections provided by the State Controller's Office. The only new thing that I will tell you that is happening for the police department, recently we became aware from the PBA that the coverage, the dental coverage and vision coverage that the Teamsters were providing they would like to have made a change. The Teamsters plan had been reduced over the years, and so there were quite a few dentists, local dentists, that weren't included in the plan. We didn't even have an orthodontist here in the plan for Teamsters. They all had to go to Syracuse. So we do have an agreement with the PBA. There's cost savings that are built into our budget because of it. And that will be proceeding to E&A on Monday, which is required. So I think that's something that's good for the PBA. That's something good for city taxpayers. And so that, out of everything that's gone on, there's not really a big change in anything. And I don't know if you have particular questions about lines. I wish the chiefs were here.
Deputy Chief, I just got off the phone with him. He said something came up. They're 10, 15 minutes away.
Okay, so then can we just go around the room and just ask questions, or is this just?
Well, if they're budgetary questions, we'll see if Heather can answer them, and if we can't, we can go to the chiefs as soon as they walk in. Is that all right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
All right, yeah, actually, I got definitely some budget questions.
Okay.
In regards to the police line in general.
Okay.
I guess that we could start at, hang on.
Okay. It starts on page 24.
Yeah, no.
I could.
There's some other things.
Do we check out page 26 while she's looking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Frankie,
sure,
would you like to
page
ask a
26.
question?
Yes.
Would you like to ask a question, Frankie? Yeah. Go ahead. Samantha, you mind if Frankie goes
No,
first?
you can go right ahead.
Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
noticed on 26, obviously, page 122, 101, $200,000 worth of salary downward, in a downward direction. Normally, it goes up, but
Yeah, so,
we spent.
yeah. So there was, as I mentioned, there is movement occasionally between departments. And sometimes it's a little radical. It goes up, it goes down. And that's just because of the type of assignments that the chief gives them. And I would have to go back, and so like if you look at the next page, under police uniform, 101, you see that there's a $1 million increase budget year over. And so when you put all those together, they balance out to some extent.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just how they classify them in their own org chart.
And I just wanted to give an update because the Deputy Chief called me back up to the council, how they proceed. Deputy Chief said he wasn't prepared for a budget meeting. He thought it was next week. He thinks the mistake was on their end. So the chief won't be here, but he's willing to still come and answer questions.
Excellent. Just in case, Samantha may.
I,
Do you have any-
Honestly, it's not for the chief, it's more for Heather, but.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Go ahead, yeah. Yep, we do everything together.
Frank, is there, you have anything
Yeah,
else?
that's just simply a transfer
Yep.
if needed from one.
Yes,
department
and what we
to
do
another. All right.
normally, at the end of the fiscal year, usually in August, I come back to you and you do a massive transfer, right, where we move money between accounts.
Yeah, yeah.
It used to be the prior budget director would go to E&A, every week. And we just don't do that because the time that it takes to move people that may stay in that cost center for a week or a month, we'd be sitting here doing it, I mean, the time that just takes to do a transfer like that. So we do a major cleanup every year.
All right, thank you. That's all.
And Frank, you don't forget, they're cutting administration and they're putting more boots on the street, and that's what we're looking for anyway, so that's an excellent job that the chiefs are doing. Samantha, you ready, or you would like to go to somebody else?
I'll go right ahead.
All right.
Heather, so we,
Yeah.
you know,
Microphone on, so I apologize. I think I could talk pretty loud, but it's better to hear in the microphones for the audience. There are 5 new positions in the line that we approved for the police department.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I was wondering, where was the ARPA funding that was transferred from the money that we allocated from the budget to those lines?
Okay, so take a look at the big ARPA sheet here that I handed out.
Yep, I
Okay?
see that.
So
Yep.
if you look at the second line, gun violence prevention, you can see that a very small amount has been moved, okay? And that money will come in. I'm not gonna, how do I say this? I could pull and put $1 million in there right now under revenue,
Right.
right? I don't wanna do that, because that gives you the sense that that $1 million is always there. So we will be moving that money in as we expend it.
Okay, so now those positions are actually filled?
Yes.
So
Well,
where-
no, they're not. So I actually had a long talk with the chief about this yesterday. Because of the large amount of retirements that has happened in the past 8 months, and the timing of the classes, and we're gonna be talking about more extensively about this with fire in a few minutes, they've been struggling to fill those positions. I believe 2 of them are filled at the moment, but they're constantly trying to fill them, okay?
They're
Because
never up to full complement.
They're never,
right?
because of the retirements that they don't expect. And like I said, we're gonna hear about that with fire in a few minutes. But so the 5 have not been completely filled for the year, no.
Okay, so then I guess that was a little confusing for me. So it says that the $250,000 was allocated through the ARPA funding.
Yes.
If you're back on page 12, so that had nothing to do with the police department?
No,
Okay, so we still have an extra $250 for?
no.
or-
So if you take a look at the ARPA money again, turn the page over. Under there, you see, down at the bottom, under other, you see city COVID healthcare protections. You see reimbursement for hiring. You still see those funds available.
Okay, so those 500s are?
So that 250, remember, and we cannot use that money to increase our fund balance, right? So you should be asking me, why haven't we used the 750? Well, it would have increased our fund balance, we couldn't do it. So
Well,
I'm
there's
hoping-
other questions that I'll get to that.
I know, but
that
I'm just
kinda-
trying to explain it all,
Yeah,
so,
no, so
okay.
what was the 250,000, I guess, then we might as well?
A mixture of salaries and healthcare.
So we were able to use ARPA funding for our budget?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to
Yep.
double check that.
Yep.
Okay, so then, I guess we'll go down, since we're on that page 13. So it says appropriation restricted fund balance, employee benefit reserve. Does that have any regards to police, fire?
Police and fire.
Okay, so what
well,
is?
well, let me just finish. So, right now, we've had an astronomical amount of retirements. There was a huge class 25 years ago, or 20 years ago, for police. We're anticipating quite a few retirements in the fire department. We're also anticipating that with the end of this administration, that we'll see a good 5 or 6 retirements, heavy hitting retirements, people that have been here many years that have accrued a lot of vacation and a lot of sick time. And so we want to make sure that there's enough funding to do those payouts. So that's what that's bringing in. We had $1.5 million that the council appropriated for reserve fund balance for those kinds of events. So I budgeted $500,000 for that.
Okay, so then let's go down to, I guess we'll jump into page 99.
Okay?
We're at 101 in this year's budget. And this is definitely gonna be a fall over into Tuesday's meeting that I had scheduled, for healthcare, because I think that this is a
Well, I don't know
huge.
anything about it. I don't know anything about the Tuesday meeting.
What's that?
You're having a Tuesday meeting, you said?
Well, yeah, it's gonna be scheduled at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That we were able to,
Well,
meet a quorum
we
for
have
it.
to make sure that she's available.
101, it was on page
Before we-
99.
That's getting a meeting.
Well, either
ready.
way, I mean, it's gonna have to be discussed, so, I mean, this
Right,
is, this
but
is
wouldn't you
something,
wanna
we've
talk to
got 2
somebody
weeks.
who's about it?
Well, yeah, the healthcare committee, who's invited to it, will know about it.
I'm happy to do that, but
Thank you.
understand, we have fire here too, so we want to get to them.
Absolutely, and that's why the
Okay.
meeting's scheduled
Okay,
on
what's your
Tuesday.
question?
The question is, so member contribution, and I had heard the mayor on the radio today that he had stated that, healthcare did not go up 30% for, police. And from my understanding, that it has gone up 30%. So I guess my question is, if the mayor is stating that the police department's increase for healthcare has not gone up 30%, then why is he looking at a 30% increase?
The mayor misspoke.
Okay,
This
so
morning.
there,
It was in his budget address, so he
Okay.
was aware of it. He misunderstood the question,
okay.
okay?
Are you speaking for him, or did he?
I'm speaking.
Do you
for
talk to him today
I
and he
did.
said he misspoke?
He came
Okay,
in and asked
okay.
me.
Okay, just wanted to double check
Yes.
on that. So their contribution for healthcare is going up that 30%.
Also, yes.
Okay.
The contribution portion and the rate portion.
Okay,
Yes.
so it is. So, and
Yes.
I understand the contribution component of it.
Yes.
Obviously, you've seen a $115,000 increase from last year to this year. And if, guys, and I apologize, because you won't see it on this year's budget, because there actually isn't a revised budget for 2022, 2023. So
Right.
if anybody had their old budget with
But
them.
let me explain that. So
Sure.
we settled the CSEA agreement, and they committed for their 3% that they got as a raise, that they would start contributing, it's either 5% or 7.5%. So that's new for this year. It's new. And with some of our retirements, right, those retirees that weren't paying anything towards contributions, or some of those old employees that have been here longer, we now have some newer employees, and they're paying 20%.
Right, and I
So
guess
that's why you see those numbers going
No,
up.
I guess well, obviously it went up $2.9 million from last year to this year under the
But that's not
self-insurance.
just the contribution, that's the actual.
Well, the
rates.
contribution, yeah, it actually is. Under the interfund police, to remember, contribution went from $507,000 last year. And I'll pull this
But not
up
to
right
two-
now.
But not to
What's that?
2.9, you said 2.
2.9 total, and the
Yeah, but
total,
not- but not
total
the-
expenditures
yeah, I think we're
for
talking about the same thing.
the self-insurance,
Yes.
revenue. So I just wanna go to page 99. Do you have last year's budget by any chance?
No.
So the police department, and I just say this because the police department just settled their contract last year. So the police department had their member contribution at $391,000. So at last year, they were paying 20% of their contribution towards the self-insurance fund of this year. So if you look at this year's budget, it went up from $391 to $507,000,
It did.
which was a $115,000
It did.
increase. So I guess what my point is, now knowing that the fire department did win their arbitration, or not arbitration, excuse me, their grievance through their healthcare with the city negotiating without them, how does this now affect police, fire, and CSEA that are involved in those contracts, for the simple fact that they were given a timeline that if this isn't completed by December 31st, that it would revert back to a possible increase. So now let's this is kind of my point to this and why it's important to have a meeting on Tuesday. So what happens if the employee contribution for police goes up 30%? What's gonna happen at that December 31st meeting if CSEA, fire, and police all have to
When we
go
get to
back?
fire, right now we're on police, when we get to fire.
Well, I kind of want to
gonna
talk about
explain it. I'm
police.
gonna
So
explain it.
so I guess my question is, what's going to happen? Are you going to have to reimburse the police department for
No.
those premium increases?
No.
If you have to go back to a contribution, or you can't settle a contract with the fire department because you will be in violation of not settling that contract?
No.
So you'll still take their 30% increase of what they're paying towards that contribution and put it towards a new contract? So they could possibly get dinged with double
If we
the?
go to full insurance, that number's gonna increase, not decrease.
Well, it's gonna increase because obviously a judge awarded that the city
It's gonna increase
negotiated
quite a bit.
without good faith with
Yes.
the fire department. So I guess that's my point. So now the police
When we get to
department,
the fire department, I will explain.
it has nothing to do with the fire department, because I still
But
wanna
I wanna
finish.
just answer the question. because
Yeah,
you're
no,
bringing
go
up
ahead,
issues.
answer it.
When we get to the fire department, I intend, in the next few minutes, to explain the contract, the self-insurance, and the interest arbitration. Okay, this all has to do with what you're talking about.
And that's fine, but can we finish this with police though? Because we're on police and I kinda wanna
Okay,
just,
but
I just
their
kinda wanna just.
contribution will go up.
I kinda just wanna get to this point. So if they're gonna be dinged with a 30% increase under that self-insurance plan, they could possibly be penalized for another component of it and then have to go back to the other insurance plan that they had
Yes.
prior to that?
Yes.
So whose fault is that? Because if you're
I don't
saying it's
know.
the fire department's fault,
I didn't say it was the fire
well, I'm just saying,
department's
you keep pointing to the fire department and saying, listen, yeah, I'll get to the fire department, but I think that this needs to be known to the police department that they just paid a 20% increase to their premiums last year, and now are expected to pay another 30% close to it, which now that we know that the mayor misspoke on the radio, that's a 50% increase on healthcare under a self-insurance plan.
Yes.
So where was the savings, I guess, so to speak? And I understand what you're talking about, contributions and so on and so forth between the police and the fire. But where was the savings, I guess, for them to negotiate a contract with the city in good faith that they did to have their premiums increase that 50% in a 2-year time? Because the city violated a contract of another bargaining agreement.
So the PBA is very well aware of the whole situation. They come to the quarterly healthcare meetings, unlike the fire department.
Right, well, I can't blame the fire department, you violated
Our two
theirs.
fire chiefs that are represented under their own union were present, so that that information could get back to the fire department.
Quick question, now do the current fire chiefs, are they able to vote on the healthcare to move
We
that
don't,
forward?
there's nothing to vote on.
So there's nothing to vote, but they can give a recommendation
Anybody can give a recommendation.
through the healthcare committee, so there's no votes or anything on the healthcare committee, so you didn't, so where, if, I guess, let's just put it like this, if the fire department and the police chiefs.
Samantha, we're trying to keep on police. You keep on-
I am, but listen, also it's okay to her bring up the fire
No, when
department.
you're
So I
done-
guess my point is, if they're not able to vote on it, then what was the point of having them on the healthcare committee? If they're not involved
We
in the
haven't had
contract
anything to vote on.
negotiation?
There's nothing to vote on. If there was
Okay, so
something
then
go-
they're just
we
there
haven't
as a
changed our
liaison?
plan. We have not changed our plan.
Okay.
Okay,
So then they're
if we
just
go
there
to
just
change
to be
our
there?
plan, we have to have some concurrence, but there's been no change.
Okay, so they're not involved in that healthcare committee? They're just there just to be
Who's
there?
they? Who's the?
Is that just actually, let's say the
Who's
chiefs, for
they?
example?
They
The
came,
police chief or
they
fire chief?
listened,
But it
and then
doesn't
the
matter,
mayor,
it doesn't matter,
they
whatever
came,
chief.
Any
they
Steve Price, it
listened,
could be anybody.
Any chiefs?
they
any chiefs.
came, they listened, they had every opportunity to ask questions, and they did. The police department, actually, the PBA asked quite a few questions.
So, I'm
And
so-
so, but let me finish.
Go ahead.
They asked questions and they're answered. And at no point has there been anything that's been contentious about the plan. Nothing.
Well, right, because their contract's already settled, why would they be contentious in
Why would
something
you
that
be
they didn't
contentious if the
violate
plan's
it?
exactly the same? If you're receiving the same health care that you did last year under the insurance, what would be the question?
Technically, you're not, because you're paying
Well,
30%
you are. You're getting
more.
the same level of care.
So but you're still paying 30% more. So let me ask you the question. So there is a possibility, if say for instance, the fire department does not settle in their contract, that the police could be penalized even on top of their 30% contribution.
Yes,
So they'll be
they
paying.
will.
So now, again, this goes back to, I guess, the question, why is the police department being penalized for a mistake that obviously an arbitrator awarded the fire department, that the city was in violation of their actual contract?
If you would like to talk about interest arbitration now, I'd be happy to do it. But
I mean,
right
that's
now-
up to the
let me
rest
just
of the
finish.
committee.
I'd like to
We
finish
want to
on
finish with the
police.
police,
No,
Samantha.
I'd like to finish with the police department.
You done with the police?
They're all, listen to me, this page is
I-
everybody on one page.
I understand
So whether you
that.
wanna talk
You-
about
you can-
police, fire,
you can do that in the
CSA,
fire
Steve
department.
Price,
You
John
can do it.
Price, Agnes Price, they're all under the same thing.
Samantha, you
So
can
that's
dis-
what you've gotta, that's what you've
We
gotta
can
understand.
discuss the healthcare and later on,
This could be
hopefully
a
we'll have time.
possibility of a $4 million, $5 million deficit in our budget.
No.
I understand that,
No.
Samantha, and, okay, we'll get
So-
to that point.
Okay, so you're saying it's not.
I have the numbers.
What
Can you-
what
can you-
numbers? Are they from the healthcare
I'm
committee or are they
I'm
made
on
up numbers?
police. I'd like to answer questions
Sure.
about the police cost
Well,
centers.
I mean, I guess that just
And
answered
then
my
we'll
question.
move on to fire. and
That
I
the
will-
police, for settling their contract, are now gonna get penalized if the city can't negotiate in good faith with the
All
fire
right,
department.
somebody else would like to ask questions on the police department, please. All right, go ahead. Celeste, you have a question on the police department? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted us to stay on the police department, that's all. I'm good.
You good? Anybody else have any questions? All right, Samantha,
I
you
do.
would, go ahead, Mark?
The crossing guards, I know it's kind
Yes.
of late, but their percentage go up. Is it because of state law? They're still at 1250, they're making 13 grand a year.
No, I think they're,
Well,
let me just take a look. It's in there. It's actually
What
under the
page are
org
you
chart.
on, Mark?
It's actually under the org chart, and I think they're making $15 an hour.
66.
Yeah, they are at $12.50 an hour. They still are at $12.50 an hour.
Is that mandated that we keep that, or you don't get a COLA whatsoever because the cost of living over?
We don't. There was an increase that was made, I want to say a year ago, because the police department was struggling with hiring people. And so we did raise it, and we did see the numbers go up. I think there are only 2 people there that are kind of permanent. People cycle in, they cycle out. I mean, Chief, I don't know if there's anything you wanna.
I mean, it's a union thing, right? Is that union?
No.
they're not union.
Oh, no, that's right.
But, we're trying to phase away from the crossing guards as best we can, identify corners that don't need them. It's very difficult to get crossing guards. And it's just.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, Assistant Chief's correct, there are less walkers, so there's really less of a need for them.
And then one other question, I was talking to Chief Ingersoll, prior. Some of the dates on their hiring dates are different than what they are. And the question I have is, does that affect the budget for like longevity and stuff like that? I think you got Deputy Chief Clark's numbers on there for Deputy Chief in 1985.
Okay.
So I'm not,
So the longevity, we make sure is picture perfect when we do the budget.
I know, but the hiring dates.
But the hiring dates may be a little off.
Now does that?
It does not
the
affect
budget?
anything.
Okay.
Nothing. Nope.
Are there any other questions
Yeah,
for the police department?
I actually got a couple. So there was one for state revenue. It's on page 11. It's under police traffic services, and I don't know if this might have been a typo in our budget from last year. But it says police traffic service. It wasn't budgeted in our budget last year. So I was just kind of curious to where this, was it funding that we just got again this year, or what is?
So the police department is a little unusual in that some of their grants awards are annual and they're built into their expense side already, and some aren't. And every year, there's an education of your budget director, because your previous budget director left, got sick and left. And so
Died.
every year, every year I'm constantly going after something else, trying to understand. So occasionally I run across something that the overtime is already built into the expense side, and if it's already built in and it's not a grant per se where they add it during the year, I make sure the revenue is in there to match. So that's all that's about.
Okay. And the only other question that I had, I guess it goes back to the employee benefits. This was on page 55 of our current budget.
Okay.
The increase in medical.
Yes.
It increased about 15% from the original year's budget to this year's budget. What was the increase under medical for that?
Okay, so this is the problem with this transition from going from full insurance to self-insurance. We are now expensing our expenses based on the actual group. So we know what our expenses are for our police department. We know what our expenses are for our fire department. Right now, the controller's office is still expensing them under the general fund, right? Instead of expensing them to the self-insurance fund. When you expense them to the self-insurance fund, nobody's gonna know what's police and what's fire. Right now, you're gonna see overages on some, overages on our fire department, and underages on our police department. I think there might be even an overage on CSEA. And so I had set it up last year, and the controller's office is still working to getting those accounts set up so that you would never see that, because you shouldn't see that, right? Because then it will give the indication that who's sick and who's not sick. That's not what we want to do, okay?
Well, right, so I guess what's the difference between the medical line or the police employee benefits and then the medical line on page 99? So are you saying that those two lines should be combined, that way that they're
No.
under one?
Is it our 207C cases?
No.
No,
it's
this
not.
is it's under
No.
medical. I mean, you couldn't, yeah, those would be under employee benefits. And
So
I guess,
if we were to combine, and I have to go back, keep my fingers
So-
crossed. If we were to combine all the general fund, medical, it should come out, and the general fund, the sewer fund, UED, golf, all those medical funds, it should come out to the total that's under self-insurance,
so I guess why is that
twice.
092 line under medical? Because that kind of, I mean, that's a little
That's because we're-
deceiving, because you're talking about another
It's
form.
not deceiving, we're simply moving that money into the self-insurance fund, and the controller's office hasn't caught up yet. And so in my goal
Page
of being
55.
totally transparent, I had to do that.
Right, so I guess, so there was a 15% increase to that line, and then you're talking about another 30% increase to that line. So you're talking about the self-insurance and,
No.
I mean, then I guess I'm confused, because
Right.
one's medical and the other one's medical, so
Right,
what's?
right. So
both, one increased 15%, the other one increased 30 under the,
Right. so-
technically
but
30
you have
total.
to
That's a
take-
45%
but listen to me for a
increase.
second, please.
Yeah, go ahead, you just explained it, I'm not
You have to
understanding
take
it.
general and sewer and all the funds, all the medical. If you add up all those medicals, they should match the total in the self-insurance fund. The problem right now is that the comptroller's office is still classifying them by fund. So the general fund has to pay for CSEA and police and fire. I have to show that money coming out of the general fund into this insurance fund. So it appears to you that it's doubled, but it's not.
But I see that, I got general city employee benefits, I've got DPW employee benefits, I've got
Yes?
fire employee benefits and police employee benefits. Then I've got a whole other self-insurance fund
Right.
that have those, first of all, so if I'm saying that, you know, the police contribution, which is this, doesn't match up to the monetary amount in this. So where is the $4 million that's budgeted for medical? How does it compare to the $4 million that's budgeted for, under the
It's in
self-insurance?
the total, and I'd be happy to sit down, and go over it with you.
Well, I mean, I think that needs to be broken down, because if you're saying that this is like, the way I'm reading it is two different amounts, you know, being included in that, and those monetary amounts, so I think that.
But understand, under the self-insurance fund, that is not all our health care. We have dental, we have vision, we have a variety of other things than self-insurance.
Right, and
We
these
have
are-
Teamsters, even in our general fund, we have all our Teamsters. So those numbers are not gonna match. This is just the amount that we're paying Excelis for our claims for self-insurance.
Right, and there's
And I'd be
Teamster
happy to do a
dental
reconciliation
and
for you.
optical under the police employee
That's
benefits.
right, and I'd be happy to do a reconciliation for you so you can see it.
Yeah, because I mean, that kind of,
Yeah,
it's a little deceiving. It looks like you're technically
I have a spreadsheet that's this long.
paying in.
Councilperson.
Well, I mean,
And
that
every
would
year I
have
come
been
down and
nice.
try to go through it with everyone, and no one wants to see it.
Well, I don't
So
know, I don't know about all that.
Yeah,
You're not saying that I don't want to see it, so.
One for everyone, and no one had any questions, so I'd be
I've
happy to go.
always, listen, I got books.
I'd be happy to go over it with you.
I've got I've actually got a budget from 2013.
Yeah, we all do.
But I'd be
Okay,
happy to
so,
go over it with you.
exactly,
Let's
Frank,
just-
so
let's just
it was
try to-
actually a lot
let's-
easier to read in 2013 than it is now, apparently, because
Yeah.
they're saying that these don't match up, so a breakdown of that actually would be
All right,
pretty
do you have any
nice.
other questions on the police department, Sam? Oh, Frankie, you have one? Go ahead.
I just know, I know it's contractual, but why almost 9% for everybody across the board? Isn't it almost 9%, from 90 to 99, from
What are you talking about? Oh,
Salary increases.
salaries?
There were
From
several,
155 to 169,
what are you talking, is that under law?
62.
No, you're talking about police. There's people that have 20% increases, there's people that have 6% increases, there's people that have 10% increases. It's all over the board.
Okay, so this is the problem, that
Where on page 62 are you?
this is the problem that I face.
62,
When you-
63.
When you have contracts that settle in the middle of the year, and they go back several years.
So
we
that's
have
retro?
Yeah, we have retro, but the budget number that you see there was last year's number. And now you've had maybe a contract that settles for 2 years in the middle of the year. So you still have that same number here, but this number looks bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's retro.
Yeah.
Any other questions,
I
Frankie?
have 2 more questions. Then I'm done. We still got, you guys shouldn't have put a time constraint on budget meetings for police and fire, knowing that they're gonna be the biggest
There's no
departments
time
inside the city.
constraint. Go ahead.
So thank you. Please, let me finish my budget questions. It's going back to this insurance component, okay, from April 1st to April 1st. What is going to happen if it's not settled by December 31st? I think that that's a huge question that needs to be answered, whether I get these
Yeah,
rundowns or not.
If we're all done with police, I will move on and answer that question for you.
You're talking about the fire department again, Sam?
Yes, yes.
Right? You're talking
Is
about,
no-
It
Do
affects
you
all the rest of
understand that
them,
it
but-
affects every single person that's under a self-insurance plan in the entire city?
are you,
So-
we're gonna talk about the contract with the fire department and about the contract and about the healthcare in a few minutes. Are you done with any specific questions?
Sure, I'll ask my questions in 42 seconds when we go to the fire.
Listen, if we don't finish by 6 o'clock,
We can
we're
have
gonna
another
have our
budget meeting
regular
later on.
free meeting, and then
Absolutely.
we can continue after that.
Sure.
So there's no
Sure.
rush here. Let's make sure, let's
We're
get
just
that
asking, you.
straight.
we're trying to stay on point with the police department budget.
Sure,
Now, is
but
there
it
any
all-
other questions with the police?
Sure, it also affects fire and everybody else, but, and police, and
Are
fire.
you all set with the police department?
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other questions here for the police department? Okay, thank you very much, officer, whoever was here to represent them. Heather, I'd like to move to the,
Whoever-
Good job, Ed.
we like-
Good
Good
job.
job, Ed.
Good job.
Good job, Ed.
Okay.
We like to move to the
Amazing.
fire department, so now
Okay.
here comes the fireworks. Let's have
Okay.
some fun.
So before we get to the actual budget, I want to go over 8 different issues/concerns that have come up. They've come up here at your meetings, they've come up on the radio, they've come up with phone calls that I've received. Some of it's misinformation, some of it is just information that wasn't provided. So I'd like to start with the contract as it relates to the arbitration on self-insurance. It was decided several weeks ago that by an arbitrator, they decided that we unilaterally went to self-insurance without negotiating it with the fire department. They also stated that this needed to be rectified by December 31st, 2023, in the hopes that we would actually get a settlement on their contract overall. They didn't say as of today, they didn't say as of March 31st.
And please don't suspect the department itself. You're talking about the union negotiation
Yes,
with the
the
fire
union,
department.
yes.
Not the department, not the men themselves,
Correct.
just the union.
Well, there's the men, there's just 2 that aren't part of it. but-
We're
yeah, go
discussing,
ahead.
the contract discussions are between the union, not the guys.
Right, so there's just 2 guys out of 124 that aren't part of
All right,
it, but
well,
that's
let's-
okay.
let's talk
So
to
122
two
out of 124, let's stay with that one.
It is our corporation counsel's perspective that, let me say this. On May 6th, the city will be in interest arbitration with the fire department union. That means they will be deciding, or they will be meeting with the arbitrator to go over the 2 years that they're in arrears. As part of that arbitration, self-insurance could be part of that decision made by the arbitrator. This is what, I'm not gonna answer questions from the floor, but this is our corporation counsel's perspective. I met with them today, the entire team. That is their perspective. It is one of the items on the table. Number 2, if that makes it and we are awarded it, it's a non-issue.
So wait, time out. So you mean to tell me that that somebody awarded the fire department the fact that you weren't able to use it as a negotiation of, a negotiable contract item, and now you're saying that that can't be a part of the negotiations moving forward? That the corporation
No, that's not what I
counsel's,
said.
all right, can you
What I said-
repeat that? Because
I
I'm
will.
very
What?
confused by
Okay,
that.
so the arbitration is on May 6th. As one
Mhm.
of the items that the city is requesting for our end of arbitration is self-insurance. That arbitrator could rule that for the past 2 years, we could have been permitted the self-insurance. Of course, that's meaningless, it's moot, it's nothing. But what it does mean is that we can have self-insurance with the fire department union going forward. So
why did they give you a timeline from, because it actually makes sense, so then why did they give you a timeline to
That's
make
why
a
they gave it,
decision by
because they
December
knew that.
31st?
You see, they knew that.
Right, so
The
you could
interest-
negotiate with the fire department, so that wouldn't be part of that. I mean, that's kind of an important component that you're actually missing through that whole point.
No, that is the
I
component.
mean,
That's why
do
they
they
gave
ever
it.
supersede a grievance, and then they filed a grievance, they won the grievance,
Mhm.
and you're telling me an arbitrator is gonna supersede what the grievance stated?
They can. So says the
I
corporate.
I don't know if it's
All-
ever
all I'm
happened in
telling
Well,
you-
history.
corporation counsel's been wrong on multiple occasions, since the
So
reason
I'm
why we
just telling you
paid
what-
millions of dollars in judgments and
Okay,
settlements.
okay.
That's not,
Okay,
that's
so
totally
we can-
incorrect.
Wrong about this, if we're wrong about this, what Corporation Counsel says that could happen,
So I'd like
well,
to.
it will even cost us more money.
About $5 million.
Okay.
About $3 to $4 million.
So let me explain to you what the numbers are, and let me keep going, okay? So if on May 6th, we win, it's over. If on May 6th, the city loses, it is Corporation Counsel's intent to file in Supreme Court. They feel this is a contractual issue
So-
to vacate the arbitrator's decision. If at such time that the Supreme Court finds not in the city's favor, they intend to go to the appellate division, and at such time as they don't find in the city's interest under the appellate court, they will be going to the Court of Appeals. This is what I was told today by our Corporation Counsel's office.
So you mean to tell me that they're willing to cost the taxpayers more money,
And how much
rather
is that
than
gonna
just
cost?
settling a contract, which could ultimately, now you're talking about a deadline before December 31st, because let's be honest here. court cases don't take, and settlements and all this other stuff don't take that much time to settle. So we could actually be bypass that December 31st deadline and then get held in contempt because we're not, we didn't settle before their deadline, get penalized going through all that time for that, rather than just settling a contract and then not being in default and held in contempt for not following the original order that the appellate division and Supreme Court and everybody else decided on that. I mean, shame on our corporation counsel, because they were really comfortable coming here talking to 4 or 5 people in the back room about how they were right or wrong. I mean, and I could tell you, in the video recordings that I seen, they were quite wrong going into a back room with 5 people. And they knew that we ended the meeting and they should have ended it there.
Let me correct
With-
you on
with
that
that,
one, Samantha.
Frank, you
Stop.
left. We caught you. We got you. We got
No,
you
you
30
didn't
seconds
catch
out.
anybody.
The meeting was
No,
started. The meeting was
Samantha,
started
I
with
run
5
the
people in
meeting.
a room.
Let's.
Well, I mean,
I
come
got the
on,
floor
Frank.
now.
Enough's
Samantha,
enough.
that's enough. There was
What
only
are you
4
gonna do?
people in there. I walked
Take me
in.
out? Hold me
After
in
there was
contempt?
5 in there, we walked out. So stop putting shadows and
you
clouds over
already
the
knew
truth.
what you were talking about.
Now
That
let me
meeting
finish.
should have
That
been
is
done.
not the truth, Samantha.
It is
Now,
the
if you want, I
truth.
can call this meeting. We can call it the end. If you're not going to listen,
Good
and we're
night.
going to respect the
I'll show
chair.
everybody
If you're
video
not going to
recordings.
do that, we'll end the meeting now.
Why? Because the truth's coming out, Frank?
There is,
that
that
why you
is
wanna
the
end
truth,
meeting?
Samantha.
Is that
I
why you
am
end the
speaking the
meeting?
truth.
Yeah, okay.
Now let's finish. You
Yep.
can ask questions.
Sure.
You don't have to get
Sure.
Loud.
I'm
And all
not
we're
loud.
trying to do
That's how
is
I talk.
get to
I'm
the
a
bottom.
family.
We're trying to get to. Stop interrupting me again.
Oh,
We're
okay.
trying
You
to
wanna
get
be
to the
interrupted.
bottom line with the fire department. If you want to ask specific questions on the healthcare and the procedures, fine. What corporate counsel does, what the executive level does, Samantha, is out of our purview. You know that,
Then
okay?
what- then what-
You can voice your opinion on any other
Then why
floor
would
you
the
want. This is a
administration
budget hearing.
Come talk to the council
This
if
is
it's
a
out
bu-
of our hands.
You may be right with that.
Exactly.
Listen to me. We have to stick with the budget. This is a budget hearing. If you want to stick to the financial, we're at the financial part of the fire
Sure.
department, please
Sure.
stick to that. If the city has to pay for it, you were right. But let's go down this road of the fire department right now. Let's make sure that their budget is succinct. Let's make sure
Sure.
they got everything they need coming,
Sure.
all right? Frankie DeBrang, you have the
Yeah,
floor.
I just want to know, are there any meetings set up to maybe try to get this contract signed?
No.
Is there, between the city and the union, is there anything that
Not
in
that
the
I'm aware
near
of.
future? No, they just don't want to
We're-
meet?
we're-
They're going to settle for
we-
the
we-
arbitrator?
The mayor didn't even know if there was a 30% increase to healthcare premiums
we-
today on the radio.
Hold on,
we are
I'm not,
all-
I'm not asking that
But the
question.
mayor is always open to settling. He is always open to settling.
Okay.
I think he has shared what he felt was important for taxpayers, and both sides are aware of that. And so at any point that the fire department would like to meet, we're going to meet.
I understand that they tried to reach out to meet the union.
Okay?
Obviously, I'm a former firefighter, so I do have some inside information, but could we set up a date? If you'd like the council there, we'd like to help. I know we can't, but we would love to help to get this thing done. What I don't understand is, there's a meeting set up between the union and the city. It may last an hour, 2, 3 hours, and then everybody goes home. And then a month or 2 later, you meet again.
And then we're.
When you negotiate a
penalized.
contract, I would think that you would stay a little bit longer and try a little bit harder from both sides. I'm not faulting the administration, I'm not faulting the union of the fire department. I just think that if they get to the table, I think something can be accomplished. I really do. I really feel that something can be accomplished and avoid all this other talk about $3 million to $4 million in the insurances and everything else. I really feel that if the city
You get
acts in good faith and the union acts in good faith, at least get together and discuss it. If you need the council to kind of oversee it or just kind of review it and try to help, we're willing to help. It could, in the end, cost the taxpayers a ton of money. And the next mayor, and there's a few of us that are running, it could cost, you're talking 10, 15% tax increase if you're talking $3 to $4 million. And that isn't fair if we could come to the table and try to get this thing straightened out, and hopefully we can. But I just don't, I just can't understand
Councilman DeBrang,
why
we're trying
you
to,
can't get 2 parties together
trying to
in a
stay-
room and get this thing done.
we're
That's
trying to
all.
stay on point with the budget right now. The
So-
negotiating the
All right, well-
contract is outside the
But I'll
budget
take
right
All
now.
right, but I just wanted to get that point.
And
out.
thank you, I appreciate that. And I just want to go back, since I had the floor, and I kind of want to finish a couple of the things that I was hinting at. So, What you're talking about is self-insurance. Now, self-insurance started last year in 2022, 2023. And you had brought up that that the fire department's out of contract 2 years prior to that. So when you're talking about negotiating and going through arbitration and stuff like that, how can you bring up something that didn't start until 2023 for 2 years prior to that? So that's another thing. I mean, you can't do that. So they're still settling a contract 2 years prior.
All I can tell you is the Corporation Counsel's office manages that process, not me.
I gotta be
So-
honest with you.
but
I think
that's what they
that
should
I
do.
think that we need a new corporation counsel, because I mean, if they're going on these things, I mean, they're
Well,
is corporation counsel involved in negotiations?
Yes.
They are.
They supervise anything that goes on. They may not be sitting at the table,
So they're
at the
only.
table when the discussion goes on.
Mr. Carcone.
But from time, and I will tell you, because from time to time, I am involved after negotiation takes place, and the law department is always there. I am there.
So I guess my question goes back to then if corporation counsel isn't involved in any negotiations, and obviously they represent the city through any type of arbitration or whatever decision that comes down from it, how can they give recommendations on behalf of what an arbitrator is gonna say and haven't been involved in negotiations? So I guess go back to that point, then that kind of makes me a little leery on what we're actually talking about.
Well, can I
Because
just go
my-
on? Can I just go on?
Yeah,
with
and I
a
just
couple-
want to
because
say
it's gonna
that
answer some of your.
my concern isn't
Yeah.
what Corporation Council's recommendations are.
Right.
My concern isn't anybody around this room.
Right.
My concern is that if if the city does decide to fight Corporation Council, and the city, or Corporation Council decides to fight the fire department, and doesn't make it to that point of that December 31st, guess who's penalized? Me as a taxpayer, him as a taxpayer, him as a taxpayer, anybody that's in this room to the tune of about $3 to $4 million.
It's not 3 to 4. I wish you'd
So,
stop.
so this is,
I'd
this
like
is
to
what.
share this information.
So
I'd
you
like to
did
have the
not
numbers.
disperse that information to anybody, that there would be a $3 to $4 million rear in the budget for what would happen is if the contract wasn't
So-
negotiated in good faith with the fire department before that.
So there have been a lot
we
of
would hold in
numbers,
contempt.
there've been a lot of numbers that have been thrown around. I have never been given an exact amount or an exact estimate until today.
Okay,
There is percentages being thrown around. Do we do 30? Do we do 20? A 30 is a guesstimate because remember, let's go back to what let me just finish. What is self-insurance? The self-insurance is what we're paying on claims. If you have more sick people, your health insurance under self-insurance will be more expensive. If you have fewer claims, it's all risk-based. What we had during COVID was people not going to the doctors. They weren't getting blood work done, so we've had a higher number than usual of high claimants. We don't know that that's going to continue, but let me just finish. So who are we to say it's going to be 30% or 20% or 40%? We've hired a healthcare broker who we've had for many years. They come up with estimates in conjunction with Excelis, and then they come to us. Last year, we did not raise our healthcare.
Which we should have.
No, well, let me just finish. We were, and I've got it all in paper, we were told by Excelis you should have a 3.5% decrease. I went to the healthcare committee. Said that I thought we should keep it at least 0. I don't have it. There weren't many. The claimants weren't up. All of a sudden, the claimants last February started going up, rather exponentially. Okay, so for all things being equal, if they're up because nobody was getting the preventative care, now they're getting the preventative care. Should they come down? So when you say 30% or 40% or 50% or 20%, there was a lot of numbers discussed. Okay, it was the mayor's recommendation after going through and talking with Adirondack, with talking with Lori Robel, with myself, that we would do it 30. It could be as low as 25. It went up to 35. So it was floating back and forth. Okay, and it's all numbers that were given to us. We didn't come up with it. We met with the healthcare committee because we wanted to hear what they had to say, what they had to think. And so that's what we decided to do because we had to have a budget number. But I would like to just move on a little bit because I'd like to explain to you the answer to 2 questions that I've heard on the radio that has been misinformation. The first question that I hear pretty regularly is how much are we saving by going to self-insurance? Okay, you just heard me say it's all based on what our claims are. It's not based on insurance. If we have 3 people that are severely ill, our claims are up, or whatever, number 5, 10. If we don't, our claims are down. As it relates to that number, today Adirondack Financial Services provided me with an email that they believe the actual savings itself, which is administration, profit to Excelis, We had some rebate changes, which actually increased our savings, is about $700,000 a year.
And I guess that goes back to my point. If you're telling me that self-insurance saves so much money, right?
Right.
And nobody, obviously, if you put the numbers in front of us, we can't dispute facts and we can't dispute numbers. Why wouldn't the city be willing to push towards their negotiations to settle the contract so that we're not pushed at all unions going back to that cost-saving measure? I mean, and here's my thing, right? You guys are the healthcare committee, you're the budget director, and unfortunately, you take the beating from the mayor's decision sometimes. And if you're telling me that it's not the mayor's decision to not negotiate a contract or not settle a contract or go to self-insurance, then shame on him for not being here to discuss this. So I don't want to slight you, and I apologize that the questions that I come at you with this. So I would like to see him here defending himself sometimes, but unfortunately, in the past 12 years, I've only seen him here twice. With that said, this is, I guess, goes back to my point. We are saving money under self-insurance, right? That everybody at this table, whoever's on the healthcare
Yes.
committee, actually agrees that. Then why wouldn't we be putting ourselves, especially Corporation Counsel, who represents the city, to try and settle a contract instead of pushing us to possibly December, where the city gets held in contempt, and now we're paying those premiums double and having to go back to the insured plan under the healthcare providers, not that self-insurance plan. Because to me, and I think anybody in this room that's actually been paying attention to the conversation for the last 45 minutes would actually agree that that's the best possible case scenario.
I believe that our negotiating team believes that they are.
Samantha, Joseph has a question.
They are what?
Excuse me.
That they're taking that into consideration as they negotiate.
Do you have a question?
I would hope
Yeah.
so.
All right, hold on. Go ahead, Joey.
When we talk self-insurance,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify, well, you can clarify it for me. Self-insurance is to a certain cap, and then an insurance company picks in
Yeah, it's called
and
stop
takes
loss.
the rest.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
My second part of the question is, just sitting here for the last 45 minutes listening to this, and to think that possibly we could wait to December 31st, I don't want to say an outsider because I'm an insider, but looking in, on January 1st, we have a new mayor. Okay, so is it possible that this mayor or this administration wants to float this through, let these guys go without a contract, and throw it on a new administration? I cannot understand for the life of me why we wouldn't lock people in the room and not let you out until it's settled. It's been 4 years now, Heather, and we've had this talk.
Heather, you gotta talk to the mayor about
Okay.
that.
Okay,
Joey.
I know, I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
no,
but
that's
I
okay.
just don't understand.
All right, we're elected a new mayor. No.
Okay.
All right, wait.
I
All
just
right,
don't
let's get back on
I
point.
mean,
Is
there's
there
three of you
anything?
guys here.
Okay,
Is there anything other than the healthcare part of the fireman budget
I just
would you
wanna-
like to discuss?
I would like to just
Go
share
ahead.
one other number.
Fin-
Today, Adirondack Financial Services provided the delta to me for what they believe the delta would be from going from self-insurance to full insurance, okay? They believe that number's $1.5 million. So remember, we raised rates by 30%, so that when you heard the number 3-4 million, that didn't take into consideration that 30%.
So that's that 2.9 plus that 1.5. So
Basically.
that's what their contribution increase, and that's why I feel bad, because, and I will say this on behalf of the fire department and CSEA, and that's why obviously the administration is the one that can put this forward, so that unfortunately the fire, or the police department and CSEA and all those who were able to settle a contract aren't the ones penalized for the city's mistake by switching to a healthcare plan that didn't include everybody without negotiating good faith. But I have one more question, Frank, and
Because I got like
I
5 other things
promise
I
I'll
need
be,
to get to.
I
They're kind
promise
of
I'll be done with
important.
this, because we've got the rest of the budget until we're ready to go. There's two things that I have in here. We're obviously, we're in contract, talks about the fire department through their healthcare, and obviously, that could take obviously a big hit to our budget if we don't settle by that December 31st timeframe. With that said, I don't see anywhere in here an increase for salary if the fire contract is settled.
That's right.
So now we're talking about a possible, and obviously we talk about budgets or estimates, and I'm talking about possible estimates to this budget. So we're talking about a possible, another $1.5 million increase to this budget if the contract does get settled before, let's use that December 31st
Yeah, I don't know the
deadline.
exact number, but there would be.
But close to $1 million.
Yes.
I mean, let's,
Yes.
I mean, the police was like, I think
Yes.
like 1.2 or
And
something
we'll
along
be
those
cutting
lines.
expenses other places.
So now, here's a possible scenario that we're talking about. So we're talking about the 2.9 increase, through the 30% increase of what the self-insurance care was. Then we're talking about another possible $1.5 million
Yeah, but the
increase.
2.9 is already included.
Right, already included, so that's what I'm saying, so
So
on
it's
top of that,
1.5.
that's at 1.5, right, through, if they don't settle that.
Yep.
Then we're talking about, say, well, I'll even round it out to $1 million, so automatically, this budget off the bat, for next year's budget, and I'll get back to that fund balance that's tied up into what the self-insurance is, so you're talking about a possibility at December 31st, a 2.5 possibly $1 million deficit to this budget going into that 2024 budget year?
The mayor believes that the contract will be settled by the end of the year, and that our health insurance, we will not be going back, we will be staying at self-insurance.
I heard of the mayor's legacy today on the radio today, and I'll just use this as a standpoint. The mayor started with a $8 million deficit going into this budget. If you mean to tell me that he could leave with a decent legacy, and you know me, me and Rob have had our differences in the past 12 years. I would be ashamed of him if he left this budget, knowing what we went in a 2012 budget with a $2.5 million deficit starting off. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say but to encourage him, because that would be detrimental to every single person in this room, because that's only two
I'd just
parts
like
of the
to
budget.
continue with a couple of other things.
Yeah, and that's
Okay,
not
next
even
up.
including
Next
that
up.
transfer from
Hold on,
CIT.
Hold on one second, Mark's got a question. Go ahead. You're voting too? Good.
You know, I'm trying to remember, was it 6 months ago or not too long ago, didn't we move money around because you were worried, if the contract got settled, we would have money to back it up?
Yes, so what we do.
So
we
where is
do-
that money now?
What we do is, that's for money going backwards, right?
Uh-huh.
Because if we have retros, those retros will go back to old years. And so what you did was you transferred money between accounts so that that money is built in.
In a reserve fund, right?
It's not a reserve fund, it's built into the expense line, like we've already expended it, but we haven't.
Okay.
Okay, so it's built in, I guess you would say, in the fund balance.
So basically,
Your
that's
fund
not-
balance would have been higher this year, the surplus would have been higher had we not accrued for what we think is gonna be the settlement.
All right.
That's not going forward, to the councilwoman's point, but it is going backward. We did the
So-
same thing for police.
So if we sell the contract this year before December 3rd, sometime, hopefully soon, it's 3 to 4 million, but I forgot how much did we move over? Because I thought you said that we would have enough to cover us if the contract got accepted.
That was that money that transferred, was it that CIT fund? Because we're taking.
No, it's not the CIT fund, it's got nothing to do
Well,
with
then we're taking an additional.
It was quite
$2
a bit of
million out
money we
that.
moved, didn't we?
We did, yeah, but
So
that
where's-
was for, remember, the fire department,
Uh-huh.
their contract is 2 years,
Uh-huh.
right, in arrears. So I made sure that for those 2-year arrears, that there would be, their increases were already built in to last year's budget.
So that's why we get a surplus at the end of this year?
Yes, yeah.
So it's in the fund balance that we're
Well,
using.
you
to
would have
cover
had
our
more of a
self-insurance.
surplus. Had I not done that, you would have had more of a surplus.
So is it part of the $14.1 million general fund balance?
It's,
No.
well,
Operating
if
surplus.
I hadn't done it, your fund balance would be a little higher.
Right.
Yes.
So it's not, so it's not part of the 14.1?
No.
Right,
How
hence
much
the
is it,
reason
more
why
or
we
less?
don't have that in our
You know,
budget.
I don't wanna give you a number because I don't
Okay.
remember.
And that is separate from an actual reserve fund we have for the
Yes.
anticipated retirement?
Yes.
Doesn't matter, you still need that for self-insurance.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanna continue.
Is
Can I-
there, okay.
They needed that
Can I
extra,
just
because
continue?
they needed that increase to cover that self-insurance
I
fund
j-
for that $2.9 million increase
I
this year,
just
so
wanna
technically there's nothing
continue.
there.
So the mayor will be proposing legislation next week for the council to temporarily increase the fire department's complement by 3. We have we have 3 retirements that are coming up in the next 2 months. And we have an academy starting the end of March. And so to assist with making sure that we have a proper number of firemen to deal with public safety issues, he's gonna proposing to do a 3-man, shouldn't say man, a 3-person increase temporary in the complement until June 30th.
And what does that do? It just gives us an extra.
It gets them in the academy for the next 5 or 6 months so they can get out there and work this summer.
So what are they gonna do? Is it just covering the 4 positions that we cut before? So technically, we're
No,
not even close to that
okay.
fire department line that was already cut.
So I would like to
So
talk
now
about the
this
SAFER
is-
grant. The SAFER grant is imminent. We're gonna know in the next, hopefully, week whether we have it or not. So there's always been questions about that. Number 5, next week, on March 6th, federal earmarks are due. I shouldn't say earmarks, but congressionally directed spending. We will be applying for a grant for a complete rebuild of Oneida Square, Station 7. and I'm gonna get into that in a second, more about Station 7. But we have hired a grant writer, Julie Berlini. We met with Senator Schumer's staff today. This came upon us quite quickly, but we feel that we have all the information that we need to get it in. And
We're gonna have the materials?
Samantha, could she finish, please?
okay.
I mean, come on.
Next up.
You gotta get the money
Next
first,
up,
Sam.
I gave you a little packet here, and I'd like to go over a lot of confusion and questions on construction. Number one, Central. Central is about 40% complete. 75% of the demolition is complete. The big holdup has been our HVAC systems. Our heaters are gonna be shipped mid-April, so we're pretty excited about that. And Central is expected to be completed by June 30th. So, very excited about that. I will tell you, because this will take into consideration Station 1 and Station 4, whenever we do things at stations, manpower needs to be moved around. Right now, our two chiefs, one is in North Utica, one's at the Academy, and I believe, Chief, you've had to move some people internally within Central because of the construction?
Yeah, so what we had to do was get everybody out of the west side of the building, move them to the east side of the building, internal things, so we didn't have to dislocate anybody for this remodel. And keep the station open and running. Guys are not, they've borne a lot over this project because the project has had a lot of delays. We started in July and we're only about 40% complete. We're hoping for a lot more completion over the next few months. We have some deliveries coming in with HVAC systems, mechanical rooms moving along. Short term, we got some goals, and hopefully we can get the east side of that building, or the west side of the building wrapped up.
So part of what I've attached here is the actual studies that the Bonacci firm has done on renovations and repairs, along with updated cost estimates. Whitesboro Street will be going out around March 20th. We'll have the bid specs by then, so it will be advertised on or about March 20th. But you can see from my top sheet, the numbers have come in, the estimates have come in quite a bit higher than we expected for the money that we borrowed. As it relates to Whitesboro Street, the thought was, a year and a half ago, it would be $115,000. The updated estimate is now $400,000. And I'm gonna explain to you why that's so important in a minute.
Can I just get a point of order? I mean,
I love that you provided this for us, but, I mean, I have so many questions.
I know you do.
And I really would like it if we could come up with possibly another time frame. I mean, on top of the.
Councilman DeBrango has already asked for a separate meeting for this, which we're gonna do, but the mayor thought it was important that we get this information out. There's a lot of information that's being thrown around. I hear it on the radio and I wanna call in and say, it's incorrect. So
Well, I mean,
so what I
yeah.
wanted to do was to get these studies out.
Yeah.
Okay, with the dollar numbers, because I need to come to you with another piece of legislation. So if you could just hold on, I'm just hitting this so that
Sure.
we can have another meeting. Okay. Shepherd Place. The design and bid specs are underway, but when you look over at my top sheet, what we had borrowed for Station 4 at $285,000 is far less than what the estimate now is. And why is that? When they got into the building, they found a lot more structural problems than they originally thought. So what we're going to be proposing to do and asking you, if you go back to the top sheet, we borrowed $975,000 for Park Ave. That number is now coming in at $2 million.
Whoa.
Yes.
So I guess if my question is.
So let me just finish, okay? So what the administration is gonna ask your consideration in doing is, and it would have to be through a bond resolution.
Absolutely.
Taking the $975 that was allocated for Station 7 and putting it towards 1 and 4 so that we can complete 1 and 4. We will not have enough money to do 1 and 4 if we don't do that. We won't. We will not be awarding Shepherd. We won't be awarding Whitesboro Street either.
I have a
So
question.
that's part of the reason why I'm here tonight to talk about that.
I have a very general question. Has there been any consideration in the past or recently of combining Whitesboro and Shepherd Place into a single new, state-of-the-art, brand-new, beautiful fire station that can serve both, that can have the same service area? The Whitesboro Street is quite close to Yorkville,
Yeah.
right? Not really in,
Which we do
closer to
provide
the
shared
city.
services
Yeah.
to them
We
as well.
do, and so many of the calls, and I don't want to,
So through the past, we've always heard this mantra that we could combine South Utica and West Utica. my perspective, you just can't. That's due to response times. If you look at national data, NFPA regulation, requirements, ISO requirements for fire insurance ratings, our goal is to try to get an apparatus to 90% of our city within 4 minutes. To relocate to a place that splits the distance between West Utica and South Utica just doesn't work. We have too much distance to cover. The city's shrunk in population. It has never shrunk geographically. We're left with stations that were built when we had 13 fire stations. West Utica was built for horses in mind. My great-grandfather was on the job when that firehouse opened with horses. It hasn't been touched. It's close, the councilwoman said it's close to the Yorkville line. It's about a half mile from the Yorkville line. Majority of one engine's calls all lie on the other side of York Street. I'm a firm believer in neighborhood firehouses. It's because it addresses response times. When you're having a heart attack, trouble breathing, if there's a fire, we're able to get apparatus to that scene much faster. It's all about how fast our response time is. And we just can't cover the amount of distances that we're talking about if we try to combine those stations at the South and West Utica. You can GIS it, you can look at all the data, and if somebody can point out where we could put that station, that, you know, I'd be willing to listen to it, but in my perspective, my 22 years of being on this department and, you know, growing up with the fire department because my father served here for 23 years, you cannot lose that West Utica station, you cannot lose the South Utica station. It's just too hard to
Okay.
cover that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Anything else to know?
That was, yeah.
And my last item, I just
But-
want to bring up,
Just one question.
Go ahead, Frank, quickie, because, go ahead.
So you're gonna transfer the money to station 1 and 4,
Mhm.
and hoping we get this grant, and then we'll take care of station 7. That may be 6 months, 12 months, we don't know how long that will take, correct? Okay, I just wanted to make sure of
It'll
that.
be years.
yeah, and I may have to come back to you and just say we need to do the repairs there, and we have to borrow the money. But I'm just trying to get 1 and 4 done.
All right, why don't you wrap this up?
Yeah, well,
and
the
what we're
last
gonna-
item-
What we're gonna try to do is get
Would you
through
rather
the
raise taxes,
pre-legislation, pre-conference meeting.
Yeah.
If we get done early, we could take up the conversation again with the fire department. So let's just wrap this up.
I just have one last item, and then I'm done with the
Okay.
fire department. Our fire trucks are looking to be 2.5 years to a 4-year advance time. And so that means if we order a fire truck today, we may not get it for 4 years.
When do you pay for it?
Huh? When you get it.
When you get it?
When you
put
get it.
anything down?
No.
So if it's gonna be that long,
Let's order 50 of them.
no, if it's gonna be that long, what do you say, 1.5 million for a fire truck?
Okay, today, if we ordered a ladder truck today, we would see it in about 29 months.
Okay,
It
so,
costs 1.7 million today.
okay,
Quarterly, the fire apparatus is going up quarterly 6 to 8%.
okay, so we have money put aside to order a fire truck,
We
correct?
ordered one already.
We ordered
Out
one.
of ARPA.
So why wouldn't we, if it's not gonna be in for 2.5 years, use that money that we have already in the kitty to pay for these repairs and then worry about borrowing in 2 years when that truck comes
Well, you
in?
wouldn't borrow the money today, you would do, so I'll be coming down with a capital plan, but I wanted to get all of this out there, because there's a
Okay.
lot, we segment all of this from our engines to our firehouse repairs, and you can't, we're talking huge sums of money, and so I just wanted to get it out tonight, okay?
Okay.
So by the time we get this fire truck, the White Oak Creek Firehouse guys will.
Heather, why don't you wrap it up, and then
I'm
we'll have
done.
to start our next
I'm
meeting. You're
done.
all set?
Yep.
All right, council members, I'd like to close the budget meeting. We will take the budget meeting up later on for the fire department if we have time in our pre-conference meeting. I'd like to start with our first piece of legislation. Andrew's kind enough to hand out our packages.
This is in committee or pre-committee?
It's in pre-committee now, Sam.
I do have a question.
Actually, this is part of our, I gotta take a break, because
All right, take a breather.
The proposed ordinance one, the sale of DPW equipment.
Yes, that's the first
I
piece.
had noticed that in our budget, that the, sale of equipment, has gone down over the years. in, usually what we used to do is we used to take the equipment and we used to sell it. We used to,
Yeah,
you know,
Bello
get
used to
money
hang
for
them.
parts and
Yep,
something like
I
that. Now
remember.
we just get rid of it. Whereas we used to go through possibly an eBay service or something
This
along
is
those
an auction.
lines.
Yeah,
So,
it's
I mean, we're
auction.
down like maybe $20,000-$30,000 inside our budget line.
Yeah.
For that, so if that's something, a possibility, I don't know how the council would go about it.
This
in-
is the
in looking at-
recommendation for an auction of the vehicles.
This is an auction, because I read there was disposal or auction.
Below is a list of Colon, I
What
recommend
happens
go
is
to auction.
If it's not auctionable, we get rid of it.
It just
Nobody wants
authorizes
it.
if it's.
Oh, I know exactly what it is, and what I'm saying is
But
that they used to
we
take
first
it.
try to do what we can to sell.
To who, though? To who?
They
It's-
torture me for titles all the time.
To who?
On titles that don't exist.
We have an auction service that we use.
Who's the auction? Is that the online one that we still did? I just had noticed that sales
It's
that
the
are.
one we hired.
It's something that Pam found.
Yeah, we've had it now. It's
And-
when we did this whole thing 3 years ago. It's been
Yeah,
the
so I
same
mean,
for-
maybe just possibly looking
We
at somebody
RFP'd it.
else to get
We
to another.
RFP'd it.
Okay.
You all set with that
That was
question,
it.
Sam? Mark, you have a question? Okay. All right, first piece of legislation is all set with the equipment going to auction. Our next piece of legislation is for some properties being auctioned off and sold. We're calling for a public hearing for 1122 Dudley Ave, sponsored by Councilman Irving. Councilman Irving, you okay with the sale?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just make sure, yes, the first piece of legislation is called for the public hearing, we need to call for a vote on that one. And the second piece, number 3, is going into committee. Our next piece of legislation is calling for the sale of a lot on Johnson Square. Councilman Irving, you sponsored it, are you okay with the sale?
Yep.
First piece is calling for the public hearing, number 4. We have to vote on that one. And the next piece is going to committee. It's the sale of the property. Number 5. We're on number 6 now. This is sponsored by Councilwoman Aiello for the sale of 767 Rutger Street. And, wow, that's different. They did 2 pieces at 2 different locations on one sheet. On 905 Belmont. Is there any explanation on that?
Oh,
It's at a T intersection.
They're combining the two properties together.
Both
It's part
properties
of
are
this.
combined?
Yes, the one on Rucker and the one on Belmont. That's what you're talking
Sounds
about?
Yep.
like they're doing something the same.
No, but
It's just a side lot. It's the
it
one, the
is,
house
it's a
that burned
side
down
lot.
in that corner.
They added it to it.
They added to it?
The house burned down in the corner.
Councilwoman Aiello, you in favor of the sale?
Yes.
Okay. We're voting on number 6 is calling for the public hearing. Number 7, refer to committee. We're on legislation piece number 8, sponsored by Councilman Irving, for the sale of 1649 Nielsen Street. Councilman Irving, are you approving the sale?
Yes.
Okay, we're voting on the public hearing, which is number 8. And number 9, refer to committee. Our next piece of legislation is sponsored by Councilman Irving, and no parking at all times, location at 1529 High Street from Addison, High Street from Addison, a telephone pole number 3-4, to be rescinded. You would like to rescind, you want parking on that area, I'm assuming.
Actually, the street name is wrong.
Okay?
It should be, High Street and, Addington.
Addington?
That's James, there's the next one. Oh, yeah, so that would make
Number
sense.
10.
James and Addington?
It should be Addington Place.
Addington Place?
There's 2 of them though.
There's there's Addington, there's Lexington. So Addington is more north than Lexington.
So instead of saying Addison, you want to put in there Addington Place?
Right.
Is that correct, sir?
Right, is there, I don't think there's
Rescinding.
Addington Place.
No, it's not Addison. He's right, it's Addington. Because it's either, there's only 2 streets there. It's Addington.
Yeah, it's Addington.
Addington, okay.
But are you
Would you
adding
just please,
I don't know.
we'll amend it on the floor?
Yeah.
We'll help you with that.
The college kids bother everybody.
Our next piece of legislation is another no parking at all times, High Street to James Street. You okay, we want to put parking there?
Yeah,
All
that's
the
good.
kids got permits because there's 10 of them in the house.
Number 11 is approved by Councilman Irving. Our next piece of legislation is another sponsored by Councilman Irving. High Street, this is, the signs are already there, we're just adding the legislation, is that correct, sir?
Yeah, I requested more signs,
Okay.
but I'm requesting the legislation. Most of the signs are gone, so this is good.
This is from Addington Place to James Street, is
Yeah,
that
that's
correct?
good. Yeah.
Okay. You did a lot of work there. No parking at all times, High Street and James Street again, on the west side. adding that also, sir?
Yes.
This is Commissioner Deeds for Gina Habaika. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, this is a resolution to adjust our solid waste service. Every year we go to these properties, I think it's the one, yes, and there should be a list. These are the ones that are probably using a different type of pickup. Roman Catholic Church. Any questions on that?
It's a really small list this year compared to previous years. Is there any explanation for that? I mean, I guess that's good. I don't have any objections, but
I don't
in
know.
the past, it's been a much longer list.
Yeah,
I
we're
think these
seeing-
are in addition to ones that are current, right?
These are new?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions to the additionals on the list? Okay. Our next piece of legislation is sponsored by Councilwoman Aiello to rescind the newspaper.
Well, I figure we could either talk about adding the Room Sentinel or rescind the Observer Dispatch completely and stay with the Room Sentinel.
If we do add, is there any price quotes yet on the Rome Sentinel? None. Could we get the price quotes so we at least we know what we're doing when we do add?
And right now, is the Observer Dispatch, do we budget about $7,000 a year, I believe, for advertising?
I think so, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Places.
I mean, the past year, it's been quite, we've had to put money in there because with all the advertisements that we do for all the ARPA funds, it's been extremely significant, so done a lot more bidding.
Would you mind if we put this committee, at least we
Yeah,
get a quote
absolutely.
first? Is that okay, clerk?
Yeah.
Would you please do that for Councilwoman Aiello? So we'll refer this to committee for now, is that okay?
Yes.
Our next piece of legislation is sponsored by Councilwoman Aiello, intersection where stops being required, Francis Street and Plant Street, been there a few times.
Oh.
You good with that?
Yes. please,
Okay.
for-
Next piece of legislation is sponsored by Councilwoman Aiello, Plant Street and Francis Street, oh, yes, there is a four-way stop at that intersection. You good with that?
Yes.
This is a piece that's sponsored by myself, Clemention and Pleasant Street on the corner. I do believe that there's not a sign there, and there should be a stop sign there because you could drive right into Clemention Street and hit a car. So it's another one of those T intersections. Everybody okay with it?
Yep.
Next piece of legislation sponsored by Councilman Irving. Stops required, Brinkeroff and Plant Street. I think this is just adding to our, there's a sign there, am I right, sir? And all we're doing is adding it to our legislation, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Same thing with the next piece of legislation, Conklin and Pleasant Street. We're just adding it to our E-code. Okay? Councilman Irving, we have another piece, Dudley Ave and Pleasant Street. Of course, another stop sign, adding it to our E-code, correct?
Yep.
Another piece by Councilman Irving, Kemble Street and Pleasant Street. I know there's a stop sign there, adding it to our E-code.
Yep.
Is there a way to make a note on these, maybe the clerk, just because with legislation like this, usually goes to Mark Sokolowski, for him to go out and put signs out. Maybe just like an asterisk saying
So-
signs in place just for legislation.
Yep.
She does that for
Good,
us.
okay, yeah.
Well,
And-
point of order though, I was just gonna ask the same thing. We still have in this, be it further ordained, the proper signage be erected where necessary.
That's kind of
If we know there's a stop sign, we should not have the be it further ordained there.
I agree.
Well, that could be removed from each one.
What's that?
Do we know which ones have the proper signage already and which ones don't?
In other words, you want the sign there, mark your check to make sure
It
the
does
sign's
say
there.
where
anyway.
necessary,
Yeah.
I suppose.
I understand. The only thing good about it, Mr. President, is that mark your check and make sure the sign is in good shape and not tipped over, not doing a twizzle and stuff like that, so.
A lot of them are.
And a lot of them are, so it gives Mr. Sokolowski a little bit more work on his plate. Is that all right?
As long as I can blame you.
He's gonna blame me.
Guess what? My name's not on one of them. He's totally looking at me.
Oh, he'll blame me, that's for darn sure.
Ed tried to save him some hours, man. He tried to save him some hours.
Now, we gotta do one at a time. Councilman Irving, intersection where stops, let's see, Miller Street and Plain Street, you okay with that stop sign?
Yeah.
Okay. This is another intersection where we're just adding it to our E-code, St. Agnes Street and Pleasant Street. Another intersection, St. Jean and Pleasant Street, adding it to our E-code. Another intersection, Taylor and Pleasant Street, adding it to our E-code. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Councilman Irving, another one, West Street and Pleasant Street, adding it to our E-code.
Yep.
There was a lot of stop signs, council members, without legislation in our E-code. Another piece, Dudley Ave and James Street,
Yep.
adding it to our E-code. Councilman Irving, Howard and James Street, adding it to our E-code.
Yep.
Councilman Irving, Miller and James Street, I know there's a stop sign there, adding it to our E-code.
Yeah.
Agnes and St. Agnes Street and St. Jane, yes, I know that there's a stop sign there, we're adding it to our E-code. Corner, yes, there's one stop sign there on that corner, St. Jane, yes, this is it. Southeast, adding it to our E-code. Sutzer Place and James Street, again, adding it to our E-code. Taylor Ave and James, adding it to our E-code. Councilman Irving, the last one, West and James, adding it to our E-code. You all set?
Yep.
And we did that in about less than 20 minutes. I think we can get back to our discussions, our budget discussions with the fire department. Samantha, you came back at a perfect time.
So, before you move on, was there anything in committee that you had to deal with?
Is there any properties in, I didn't get
There
the
are
committee the whole
properties in the
folder, I'm
committee.
sorry.
There are properties in committee.
Other than the properties that would obviously be part of the public hearing? Is there
When you
anything
get
to
the
go over?
opportunity, can you hand us out the whole committee of the whole folder so we can make sure those properties are good?
Okay. All right.
I didn't get the committee of the whole. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just check, make sure we're okay with that. Give us 2 minutes.
Well, we've got about.
The only two properties that are here for the sale are number 8 and 10, one on Columbia Street and one on Capitol Ave. Any issues with the sale of those properties?
No.
Okay.
We have hearings for those tonight?
Yes, public hearings will be there tonight.
What are they, 8 and 10?
8 and 10, ordinance 8 and 10. Any questions on the sale of those properties? We good? Okay. If my colleagues don't mind, we'd like to continue the discussion with the fire department, as long as our budget director's here. Is there any issues continuing that discussion? We're good? Okay, Heather, you got the floor again. Please continue.
Page 38 is where our fire department cost centers begin. I didn't know if you had any questions, concerns. There's not a lot of huge changes here.
This is, you're on page 38. The only other question that I have would be in regards to if they were to award the fire department, what would be the possible increase for the payment made to the fire department in May?
You mean for retro?
Well, it could be retro, it could be.
I'll have to get that for you. I don't have that.
So that's on top, another
Yeah.
increase on
Not the
top of
retro,
what
but
we're
yeah.
talking about.
I'll have to get you that number.
What was it again?
I don't know.
I'm
I have
drawing
to
a
get it
blank.
for you. I have to get it for you. I don't have it right
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Councilman DeBrango, you have the floor.
Yeah, I don't know what page, I looked at it, I have numbers scribbled here, but, as far as the ambulance service.
Yes. Calls are up.
Increased
Calls
revenue,
are up. Calls are up.
approximately 400,000, something like that, 200,000, what?
About 330.
What's it,
Where are you? What
330?
page are you on, Mr.
It's under
Miranda?
revenues.
330.
It's under
I don't know
revenues.
what page
It'd be
it is.
under, it'd
Mark that down.
be towards the back of the.
Where are we? What page we go to here?
That's on the revenue
You're
side.
thinking about revenue, right?
Yeah.
Page 5, I think.
It's on page 5, yep. 3/4 the way down the page.
What's the number?
Page 5. Yeah, and we, because of the timing of when we get paid, and when Medicaid has to pay a lot of the claims, Medicare and Medicaid, we keep that revenue line open through the end of July. So as claims come through for the prior year, so it's very difficult until we get really into the late, actually the summer to know what our number's gonna be. But work pretty closely with the chief and Captain Terrasano, so we kinda have an idea of where we're headed on that. So that's why that number is budgeted the way that it is.
Our call volume's up, we had about 800 more transports than we did the year before. So calls keep on climbing, but at a time, and it definitely count for a lot of them.
And we don't get full reimbursement for all this, right?
We do not, no.
Right, some of them.
We're on the ambulance
Yeah.
revenues, it's on
Page
page number
five.
5.
I'm on 5, okay, that's,
Yep.
I'm just looking. Okay, ambulance.
I have a couple questions on that page. I'll ask the easier question first. Are we charging enough for Fire Academy, the fees that we charge to other municipalities? Because you gave me a tour the other day. It seemed to me that they're getting an awful lot of value. It's an amazing program.
Sure.
Are we charging enough to other municipalities?
We are charging just about the same that the State Fire Academy is.
Okay.
$5,000 a student.
Okay.
And we are charging.
Okay. So there are, yeah.
We
Okay.
have to charge more than the state, I mean, so we have to be somewhat.
But we can't charge that much more than the state.
Right, and we did just raise it last year.
I got
Okay.
a quick little question on that. Are we still feeding them? How much is it
MVCC
costing us
feeds
now?
them for us.
We always get that reimbursed.
Yeah, so MVCC is, we have a contract with MVCC, it's a partnership, and they actually eat at MVCC.
So we're feeding them about 80, 90, how much? A year? What'd you
Well,
budget for that?
It's reimbursed to
It's
us.
reimbursed.
All right.
They pay them this year.
All right. That's a lot of clarity.
So I guess the other question I have is back to the ambulance. Have people done in the past or considered doing a thoroughgoing external audit of the ambulance service in terms of both the revenues but also what it really costs? Have we broken it down, what it's costing us to run the ambulance service?
So I know in the past, we looked at it, I have not.
Thank you.
So early on, I was actually here before, under Mayor Julian, when it was decided that we would move forward with the ambulance service. And so there was quite a study done, based on need.
At that time.
At that time, but I mean, that's 20 years ago, 25
Right.
years ago.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I was a reporter, so I don't know if I was in here, but I think I remember getting something that Jim Zecca requested. There was there was an audit of some sort done, and they gave it to us.
It was years ago.
We wrote a story on it. Yeah, I think it's about 8 years ago.
Yeah, that
9
was
years.
quite a few.
It's over there now.
So,
It's over there.
before we started the ambulance service, we started ambulance service August 1st, 2005. My first couple years on the job, when I was appointed, we were 20 personnel a day. We have the ambulance service now, we're at 23 personnel a day. So we've only gone up 3 personnel.
Mhm.
We've tripled our call volume.
Mhm.
So for any study, we just have to count 3 personnel and the equipment and the costs associated with running that. So we took in 2.6 million last year. We're probably, our expenditures are somewhere around 1.2 maybe. I mean, I'm just guessing at this point, but, we get a lot of service for what we put into it. We're saving tax increases on a yearly basis because of the work that those firefighters are doing. There's a huge gap in ambulance services right now. So to expect private ambulance service, we're getting phone calls from private ambulance services that we're not gonna have paramedics on duty this day, this day, and this day. So we are writing in more calls, the outer apparatus, the district apparatus, because we have paramedics on them, we respond to a call, we don't have one of our ambulances available because our call volume has gone up substantially. The private ambulance responds, they don't have a paramedic, there's a paramedic level call. We cannot leave that call, we have to take that call in, and we're doing that on a regular basis. 1,487 instances last year, the fire department did not have an ambulance available to respond to an emergency call in the city. So that could have been because there's delays with hospital at the emergency rooms because the ERs are swamped. Our patient turnover time Could be anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours. We've had people waiting on our stretchers for a couple hours at a clip. We have Star Ambulance. You guys know where Star Ambulance is?
Mhm.
It's located in Prospect. They come into the city on a regular basis because we don't have enough resources to service those calls.
Wait a second, where are they?
Prospect.
Up Prospect a little bit, towards, Forest
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're driving.
I thought you meant Prospect Ave, and I was like, I don't think so.
No, they're driving 18 miles, 20 miles to get, to come into the city. Edwards Ambulance, Central Oneida County, Kunkel Ambulance, you know, there is a need. Our call, like I keep on harping on it, but our call volume has risen a lot in the last couple of years. The last 5 years, I mean, we keep on climbing and climbing and climbing. You know,
So what do you think accounts for that, the rise in call volume?
it shows that there's a need in our population. So we are the entry point for a lot of mental health evaluations. We are the entry point for people that don't have access to health care. We provide, vast majority of our service go to underprivileged people that are in our neighborhoods. You know, when there's an issue, they call us. And so whether they fall, they got a simple thing, just a cut hand or something, you know, they're calling us for that. And, you know, a lot of times they want to go to the hospitals. And it's just, their lack of accessibility to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps on rearing its head. You know, we have urgent cares, but if people don't have the ability to get the urgent care, they don't have the ability to get the emergency room, they don't have primary care physicians, you know, they're calling to use the ambulance. It's just a regular thing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
Joseph, you have a question? Any other questions right now?
Well, Chief, can you just touch on the fact of the water service availability to the South Utica Firehouse? And what the lack of being able to man that truck does to that area if there were an incident going on with water availability?
Yeah, so in South Utica, we have what we call a Quint fire apparatus. So it carries water, and it has hose on it, as well as the aerial ladder device. There's 3 men assigned, or 3 personnel assigned to it normally. That is down from 5 personnel that were assigned there for some years, and then before that there were 6 personnel assigned there. They've been redistributed throughout the city. You know, it gives the firefighter the ability to attack a fire in South Utica, but they got to make a decision. So are they in rescue mode, or are they going to try to extinguish the fire? So with only 3 personnel, we can only do so much with that apparatus. You know, they do what they can. The goal is to get other apparatus there in a short amount of time. Again, that's why we have 6 firehouses and the ability to have water on our aerial ladders. We went a long time without having a Quint apparatus, and since 2012 we've been able to have one up in South Utica. Does the manpower issue at the South Utica station cause some concern? Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that if even talking about the SAFER grant, if we don't get the full amount of people that we applied for, why it was important, you know, especially with, you know, you talk about residential housing and so on and so forth, that hasn't changed inside the city, that it is important to try and man that fire apparatus back into the city as a vital component back into South Utica. So I just wanted to touch base on that, why the SAFER grant is actually important. And if we don't get the SAFER grant, why that fire service would be important to the residents of South Utica. The only other question that I had was in regards to purchasing fire trucks. We talk about the new high-rise buildings that we have in the city and so on and so forth. Do those new fire trucks that we are purchasing account for the fact that we do have high-rise buildings inside the city? And would we be able to move one fire truck to the other with those new fire trucks to be able to accommodate the higher-rise buildings that we have inside the city?
So obviously we have 2 aerial ladders that are on, or aerial apparatus that are on duty 24/7. You know, our response to high rises is not only just the aerial device, but it's with the engines as well, and it's about how many personnel we can put on scene. I would say that, you know, with our equipment purchases, we need to keep on purchasing. Okay, so we have a vehicle replacement plan, right? So we try to follow that vehicle replacement policy, or that plan. We can't always follow it to a T.
Which
so-
we did try to do that when we,
And just a quick question. Some of these rigs are so big that they don't even fit in the doors of the other firehouse, the smaller firehouses?
Yeah, correct. So-
Is that, so you're only limited to where you could put them?
Yeah, so. if
And
you
just
take-
one other thing, Chief, I just want to say one thing, because she was on something here, and a lot of these warehouses are being turned over to housing facilities, and, you know, Doyle, and we can go on and on. There's a lot of warehouses there that are being turned over, and people are actually living in there now.
Yes.
So you're gonna need that aerial ladder, you're gonna need all the manpower you can get. It's not like you're going into a warehouse anymore. There's a lot of people living in these places, and there's some huge buildings out there. So we gotta make sure that we fully equip the men and women on that fire department. I don't care what it costs, we have to save lives, and that's what we're gonna do. So just go ahead and finish.
So, you want to talk a little bit more about high rise?
well, I mean, yeah, I think that's really
About
important.
the-
I mean,
The vehicles not fitting in the firehouses.
well, I mean, and that's
another.
I mean, I guess, and that's another thing too, because we are gonna have to look into the fact that we are going to need, you know, the high-rise buildings to get into, to some of the things that we need. And I guess if we're purchasing fire trucks, why not let it
So-
adapt to that component too?
Just an example, you take truck 2, which is at Central Fire Station. There's really only 2 stations that apparatus can fit into. It's Central Fire Station and it's Station 5 North Utica. There's only one bay that it can fit into in Station 5. So there's only 2 places we can park that apparatus. You know, majority, you know, we have 2 buildings that were built for horses. We've extensively modified West Utica to be able to park the new apparatus, newer style apparatus in there. New NFPA requirements for fire stations. And keep in mind, when we build a fire station, we talk about fire stations, we want essential facility code, right? So we're not meeting that with some of our older buildings. We're never going to meet that code with our older buildings. It's just not gonna happen. But we need 16-foot wide doors. That's the standard now. That's the national standard. We're not anywhere close to that with any of our buildings. We're feet short. The older buildings are 12-foot doors. You know, our apparatus are 8-foot wide. The reason why we talk about 16-foot doors is that we want to eliminate pinch points, and because the apparatus is growing bigger, pinch point is if you're pulling out with a fire truck, you don't want to kill someone that's next to the fire truck in between the doorway and the fire truck that accidentally gets there. You know, we have height restrictions. Obviously, West Utica has a lower height than Central Fire Station and 3 engine, or Station 3 in East Utica. You know, we're gonna have issues with our apparatus, you know. even-
And I get it, and I guess my point is that, I mean, if we had to buy a fire truck, they could potentially reach those high-rise apparatus, you know, reach the
high-rise building.
the high-rise building that you need. I mean, the DPW garage, you can't tell me that you can't fit a fire truck into one of those facilities if you ever needed to, put one of those in there and stuff like that.
With our aerial apparatus, the highest we can get is 8 stories. No matter what, the industry standard is 8 stories, so that's about as far as we can get. And then if you take the hospital building, it has a setback. So, you know, with the hospital, because where you got to park and how far you can reach, you're probably not going to be able to get the 4th story on a section, not the entire building, but a section of the building due to the setbacks. So it really depends. That's why we look for no parking and things like that, because we can only, the further back we got to park, or the further away you have to park from a building, the less distance and height you can get.
Any other questions on the budget for the fire department?
Okay.
Councilman Ken.
Yeah, I have a question. Chief, do we need any more rigs right now? I know we ordered one, it's gonna be a while.
Yep.
What do you recommend?
So
We
yeah, so-
borrow money for the next one.
yeah, we ordered the engine in January 2021. They haven't even started it yet. We're expecting to take delivery sometime in the fall. So we paid about $850,000. That same engine today, if we ordered it today, it's gonna be about $975,000. The fire apparatus industry is going up 6 to 8% quarterly. So if they're.
Did you say quarterly?
Quarterly, 6 to 8% quarterly.
Wow.
So we can expect, the industry's changing over after March 10th. So we have a price right now that is good until March 10th. On March 11th, that's gonna, the aerial apparatus that we would like to order goes from 1.7 million to 1.8 million. So that increase is gonna be somewhere between $100,000 and $133,000. You wait another quarter, we're gonna be up again. But the engine that we need to order, that kind of, because we're running 2001 apparatus.
You got places to put these rigs?
We got to get rid of some of them. You know, we got there's a couple that we just got to send out the door. The 1996 Ferrari is completely rotted out. We keep it as a
Backup.
backup, deep backup. You know, we really don't want to be using it. We've been using this 2001s too much. The 2001s are starting to experience a lot of corrosion issues. If we were to order an engine today, I have a delivery date of somewhere around 36 to 42 months. So it's just, and the largest apparatus motor manufacturer, which is Cummins right now, they just sent out a notice yesterday due to the EPA changes that are taking effect in 2027. The motors that we have been buying, we're not going to be able to purchase anymore, and that's going to take effect in the fall. They don't know what the next price increases are going to be on the new generation of motors, because there's a slew of EPA changes, mandated changes that are going to be taking effect. So that's another unknown. Apparatus manufacturers are talking that after the fall, they don't know how to do the pricing with the new apparatus because they don't have anything solid.
I believe we should stick to the old Cummins diesel.
I would like nothing more to use the V92 Detroits that we had, but unfortunately we cannot use that anymore.
Okay, that's real good news that you gave us, guys. You know,
Yes.
real good news.
Any other budgetary questions?
No, is there any other budgetary questions for the fire department? I'd like to close it. Okay, well, thank you very much, Heather, for your time. Well, you want to close out?
ARPA.
It says ARPA, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why Mike and Austin's here, and Marcus. So, as committed, I said as soon as I got the budget out, I would be back down here on an update on ARPA. Last I saw all of you on this was, I want to say right before Thanksgiving. I think it was November 21st that I came down, and Brian Thomas came down. So what I did was, I kind of grouped these by category, and questions that I thought you might have on different things, I kind of made notes.
Okay.
Heather, can I mean, why, nobody's even been able to have the time to digest this. Like, can we?
Yeah, I know, and that's, all we're doing is presenting. We're not asking you, we're gonna go through a couple of things, okay? I committed to doing this, and that's why we're here tonight. We know we're not gonna answer all your questions. Very rarely, I wanna be clear, very rarely do we get a question about anything. Even when I come down here and I present this, I never, but nobody follows up. I get no emails, I get no questions.
That's not true.
Not about individual projects.
Because I haven't had an update.
You had one at the end of November, at the end of November.
We pulled this for a separate meeting. I mean, we
Yeah.
literally just got this the
All-
day before.
Well,
You-
what you want to
we'll
do
come
is get a little
back, we'll come
background from
back.
her right now. She's here for 20 minutes.
We'll come back.
but the idea was to introduce it.
Yeah, that's all she's doing.
That's all I'm doing.
Unless you want to take a break.
It's not that, I just would like to digest
So-
it.
Well,
Yeah.
get some information, then you can come
I
back with
didn't
some
know that
questions.
this was gonna be given to us today. I mean, there's a whole.
We've been asking for it, so I'm glad it's here.
Yeah.
Right,
I was gonna
15
say-
minutes before 7 o'clock
So-
meeting started.
Yeah, so
That's
just wanna.
okay, but
She actually gave
Let me
it to
bring
us
up
a
couple
couple
of
hours
things.
ago.
Under the first,
You've been begging for it. You've been begging for it.
That's right. Go ahead.
I don't understand. You've been begging for it.
Our budget director's got the table. Go ahead.
Okay, under the first category of police, I had a budgetary question that was posed earlier today as it relates to officers, if they've been hired, the 5 officers. And Ed, Deputy Chief, if you wanna just, I tried to explain about the timing of officers being hired and that we don't have the full 5 on at this moment.
So the ARPA money was allocated for gun violence, for officers to proactively combat gun violence. We put together that unit again. It consists of 5 officers, 2 supervisors. That being said, you know, it takes a year for us to hire and train new officers. So We increased the complement, we created
Gun
the,
violence, line number 2.
we created the unit. We have 10 vacancies which we're currently filling. Those 10 officers will be on the street this time next year.
That's good news, Ed. That's good. At least they're coming, at least they're trying to be a police officer now, huh? We got a few people.
We have 10, yeah, and we anticipate.
How many are laterals?
We have 2 in the queue for that.
2 in the queue for laterals?
Yep.
Okay.
And it helped what the council did for us with regards to laterals.
Sorry to interrupt. Tyler, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. So that really, under the police category, that's kind of the only kind of unusual thing that someone was asked a budgetary question about. Under fire,
Where is this in our actual budget?
it isn't, because it's kind of grant related.
Well, I guess that's my question, so it says.
It
that
carries over from
these
year to year to
officers,
year to year.
They have been hired, right? So this is under the original account, so where does that supplement in our budget?
As I mentioned earlier, when you asked the same question, we're not pulling any of that money in until such time as we have the officers that have earned it.
But
So
it says that they have been hired.
officers
Can I
haven't.
just ask a quick question, just to get in between this? Will there be a chargeback
Yeah.
at some point?
Yeah.
To those accounts?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I get that, but it
All
says
right,
they
I
have
just
been
wanted to put that
hired.
out there.
I think
I think that's what
hired.
that's what
Then
they're
it
planning.
should be in the budget, that should be in this budget now. It's not like they're officers being hired where we would see a future chargeback. So I guess if the officers have been hired, then where is that chargeback in this budget?
It's not in there yet.
That's what E&A
And that's the
does.
good news,
I get it,
council
so
person.
where-
You should be thrilled about that.
So then how can you allocate money for something that hasn't been?
Because we can't, we don't know that we're gonna have them. Because of the number of retirements that are taking place in our police department, about a month ago, we didn't have any of the 5. We didn't have any of the 5. How can I pull money in and it makes the budget look like it has that much more revenue when we don't? So like we do with everything else, we bring that money in when we actually expend it.
Okay, so we haven't hired any officers in this budget.
You have, but the other people.
I believe-
retired.
So then
But they
what do
keep
we
losing.
allocate?
They
Right,
keep
what do we
losing to
allocate?
retire.
It still
Point-
says actual spend,
Point of-
$253,000.
Just
Point of
quick
order.
question, one question.
Seriously.
The complement prior to the 5, what was it, 168? What, 160?
Yes,
Okay.
168 increase.
So the
173.
complement right now technically is 173, but we can't get that number? Or we added the 5?
We had 5.
No. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
A different question?
Right. And how many
Right.
people do we have employed under the 173 as of today?
We have 10 vacancies, which
Okay.
we're currently
So
filling.
we're at
And we
163?
anticipate 2 more vacancies coming up.
All right.
So, may I
That's
ask a
pretty much
question?
simple explains everything.
Mr. President, go ahead.
Go
You got
ahead.
the
Thank
floor,
you.
sir.
Budget Director. In the table of organization listed in this budget,
Yes.
how many people are in there? Are they in there?
173.
173.
Yeah.
Right. And are the salary lines funded?
Yes.
That's what her question is.
Okay. Yeah, they're funded. They're there. You can see. You
Right.
can see all the
So
vacancies.
no, so the point is, if the money is coming from ARPA and there will be a chargeback,
Yes.
we're balancing the budget without the chargeback right now with those salary
Which is a good
lines
thing,
filled.
which is a good thing.
Right, so
Right,
then
because
the
the-
actual amount, what was the
We could
actual
hire
amount
10 by
spent?
the end of the year or whatever. I mean, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Right.
So
Right.
you gotta keep it at 173, I would imagine.
We don't know if we
agree with
allocate
what
it yet.
everybody's saying, I'm not disputing
I'm
what
with you.
everybody's saying.
Yeah, I'm with
What
you.
I'm saying is that it says budget,
It's a
okay?
savings
Then it
because you
says
don't fill the
actual,
Actually, none of that is.
okay? Then it says available budget. It says officers are being hired. So if we've already used this money for actual dollars amount, where is that money in our budget?
It's in the money with the people that retired. That's why.
Really, Joe, why isn't it in our budget? You're not understanding that. Then it should be a charge.
So
back
can
already
I
in
answer the
budget.
question? The 253 that's been spent so far is not on salaries.
Okay, so then why does it say officers that have been or are being hired?
Because that's what I was told. That there are 1 or 2 officers that were hired some time ago, but when you shift in and out, when people are retiring, right? So we haven't reconciled that yet. We haven't.
Okay, so this is in last year's budget.
When we got the ARPA funding, yes, probably a year and a half ago.
Okay, so then can somebody give me a line item on what the $253,620 is?
Sure, I'll get you a printout. You have the ability to go
Because
look
I
at it
guess
at any
that's my-
point.
That's my question.
It's cameras.
If you're saying officers have been, are being hired.
Yes.
And that's an actual
That's what
amount
I
being
was told.
expended, we can't hire officers outside of our actual budget.
That's correct.
So it has to be budgeted for.
And it is.
No, but her notes on
So-
the side are things to try to help the council understand, you
No,
know.
it's not helping
No,
me
no,
understand,
no,
because we
listen,
didn't spend
Sam,
that
but Sam,
much.
Sam.
We have been hired.
But I didn't finish the sentence though. To try to help people help them understand where the projects are going. So have our been hired, where we are in the projects. The 253 was spent probably mostly on cameras because gun violence isn't
No,
all
actually,
those
the
personnel.
cameras
That's her
are up.
addition note to where we're going.
No, that's for the Axon.
So then it
Who-
needs to be expended.
Councilman Miola, are you the chair of this meeting, right?
Yes, Mr.
All
President.
right, when this is done, I just wanna, I'd like to.
Gun violence prevention.
I will get you the list of the cameras that we
You
bought.
just said cameras, and then it said up.
But cameras are part of gun violence prevention.
That is
So
that is
then
body worn cameras. That is not cameras that we're placing on the
Guys.
streets. Guys, right.
If I'm looking at ARPA funding
Poll
expenditures.
cameras.
I will get you the itemized
So
list.
this is why I'm confused of why this is not right. It's not right, and this is why I'm saying that this needs to be broken down into what the $253,000.
She just told-
I'll get you the
She's
list.
going to get you a list, Sam.
I'll get you the
Right,
list.
so then what am I looking at?
She's going to get you a list so you can see
This
it.
is not an actual list of what ARPA funding has been spent for. Because if somebody
It's
asked
the
me
budget
tomorrow-
versus the actual. If you would like a sheet on every one of these on how everything is expended, I'll give it to you.
I've been asking it for 2 months now.
No.
These are the totals. If you want more specifics, Sam, she'll give it to you. Yeah.
Ask me the question, where $250,000 for gun violence prevention has been expended to? Ask me that question.
We don't have a breakdown.
Ask me that question.
I can't answer it.
No, I'm just saying, can you ask me that question?
All right.
Please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So it could be 6 cameras, whatever,
Right.
at this amount.
Yes, you want a breakdown, Sam, I understand.
But now they're telling me that that hasn't been what it's expended for.
All right.
Because I don't see it.
What-
It's expended for gun violence, which included vehicles, which included cameras. I came down here and did a budget and presented all that, but I'm happy to supply it again. I'm happy to give you a Munis printout of what it's been expended on. That's not an issue.
All right, so you would like,
Okay.
you also have access, don't every
Yes,
council member's got
yes,
access to Munis? We
yes.
also have access to it, Sam.
And I just got this sheet today, so now
Got
if I
it.
was looking at Munis, I would be looking for officers, I would be looking in salary lines for the $250,000 to come out of.
Okay.
And now you're telling me that this line is expended for cameras, body worn cameras, this camera,
That's the
that
budget.
camera.
That's part of the
Everything
budget.
else
Well,
will
it's hard for the
also be
budget
added.
director to know every
I
line,
regret-
so
I
sometimes.
regret-
Mr. President, you have the floor, go ahead.
Would know every line.
Okay.
Thanks.
Um,
Now, I'm coming at this, obviously, my vote on the budget DNA was not yes, but this is one of the things that I was looking at. We have to balance this budget, right? 2 million and change coming out of CIT, right? And this does happen year over year if you look. I don't necessarily agree with this, but we did not have time to talk about this anyways prior to the budget going through E&A. As we discussed, there's 173 positions in the table of organization in the budget, right? Those are funded. If they end up, for example, at E&A, doing a resolution to do the chargeback and bring the ARPA money into the budget next year, then the budget director may not draw off of CIT. That's why sometimes you see that stuff. I don't necessarily like the way we're moving it around right now. Like I said, I voted the way I did on E&A, but that is unfortunately the real explanation of what's going on right now.
So, Council President, why I appreciate that.
I'm just
explanation.
it's just matter of fact. I'm just telling you, that's what's going on
Let
right
me
now.
just put it like this. So, if $253,620 were expended for those 5 people that they wanted to hire out of that line, right? Officers that have been hired, officers that
Understood.
will be hired, according to this 5-officer sunset clause that we had received, okay? It said a total of 5 new positions was $469,000 in year 1. So I guess my question is, if you're saying that these are the officers that have been hired or are being hired, that money should actually look like this sunset clause of that $490,000, because then that would tell me that that exact amount would be going to those five officers that are hired. But now you're telling me that the actual budget amount for officers that have been hired and are being hired is well, I'm just saying, this is what I'm looking at. So, I mean, nobody can look at me like I've got 8 heads right now, because nothing is adding up to me. Well, I don't know, I feel like everybody is, because I mean, yeah, well, I'm just saying, I mean, it's very confusing to try and understand what's actually going on here.
Of course
So I
you-
guess the Munis printout.
Right.
Right, but Joe, and I get that. So
So why don't you
Right.
wait until after the breakdown, then we can go from there.
These should be giving to us with the actual amount that's already, if you're telling me that budgeted amount, fine. I would have no argument because that's what was budgeted for. But you're telling me that it already actually expended this monetary amount, then I need what those actual monetary amount have been expended for.
Okay, but I agree with you. But she brought this out because we've
Just
been
for
asking.
general.
And she said we're gonna have another meeting, take a look at it for 20 minutes.
Perfect, right. So
That's
now,
what she
again,
said.
if I didn't ask this question, and tomorrow, somebody had called me and said, hey, Sam, can you tell me what that $253,620 was allocated for? I would look over and I would say, oh, you know what,
But
that's an
councilperson,
officers
you
that
would
have
do
been
that
had.
for every line, the hundreds of lines that are in the city budget.
I do that, and I can actually go
But
in
how-
Munis.
but how
I've
do you
actually
know
tried
what's
to
in
look
the
up the
line?
ARPA funding and I
How do you
can't
know
look it
what's
up.
in the line?
What do you mean, how do I know what's in the line?
If I got a line that says
Heather,
contractual.
this is not, first of all,
You don't call me and say, what's in contractual?
Well, of course you don't answer my emails. I mean, I can go back, I sent you 15 emails.
You sent
Another
me
question
two.
that I have is, since we're gonna get into this, I just read in the Utica City School District, board minutes, you accepted a position. Who is going to fulfill your position? Are you still gonna hold the city position inside government, or are you gonna take that City of Utica School
That's-
District
that's the
position?
executive
I
level,
wanna know,
Samantha.
because who's gonna be there in 2 weeks when she's not there to answer my questions, because she accepted a
You don't know
full-time
what time
position
she's
someplace
terminating.
else?
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, you're not going
Next
anywhere?
couple months.
Okay, the next couple months, so you're staying as a full-time city budget
Yeah,
director?
yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, good. So I just wanted to verify that.
Why
Feel
are
better?
you making this so personal?
I'm not, because you're
You
sitting here
are.
saying I don't call you, I don't email you.
I didn't say
I
that.
have millions of emails that I had sent to you
You
without a
have
response.
two. You
So,
have two.
I mean, you
Okay,
can really
council
go there
members,
all
if
day.
there's anything else, I'd like to
I have
close the
to
meeting.
foil information as a council person.
Everybody good? Okay, we're closed for now. Mike, where's Mike? We got 5-minute break. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. 5 minutes.
It's March 1st, 2023. It's about 7:06. I'm going to call this meeting of the Common Council to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Aiello, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Urban, Beatrice, Williamson, Classimo Testa, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've had quite a swath of meetings prior to this, so let's see how we can move through it.
How many stop signs can we do?
Well, we've got quite a few. First order of business is the minutes from the previous meeting. It has been posted
I'd
on
like to make
Eco
a
360.
motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes, please, Mr. President.
We have a second from DeBrango. Does the council accept the minutes? Okay, no one is in dispute of that. The minutes have been posted to Eco 360 for viewing by the public and any council people who would like to review them. Next order of business this evening is the public hearing. We do have a public hearing this evening on 2 properties. However, we have no one signed up to speak on those properties, but there are people in attendance, so I've been told, if there's any questions. The first property is proposed ordinance number 8, an ordinance approving the designation of Mohawk Valley Health Systems as an eligible and qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 of GML for the purpose of the sale of 500 to 504 Columbia Street. Miola is making a motion to pull that from committee. Second from Williamson. Yep. All right, that is the sale of 500 to 504 Columbia Street to the Mohawk Valley Health Systems from the URA. Public hearing which is held. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Thank you. Second piece is proposed ordinance 7. That is the ordinance for the sale of 318.46-1-28.1 and 1226 Capitol Avenue and 1231 Gray Avenue.
Is it 7 or is it 8, Mr. President? Is it 10? Or
It
is it
says 7 on the public hearing notice.
10.
So, it is 10 though in the packet. So, would someone like to pull ordinance number 10?
Motion, Mr. President.
Thank you. Second from Friend. This was originally sponsored by Councilmember Burmaster. This is for the sale of 318.46-1-28.1, 1226 Capitol Avenue and 1231 Gray Avenue to construct 5 starter homes to Human Technologies Properties Corporation for a sum of $100 from the URA. The public hearing which is held. Your votes.
I just wanted to make a brief comment on this. I think this is absolutely wonderful. I think investing $1.5 million, I think we've seen a couple proposals inside the city to the tune through Municipal Housing Authority for a project of the tune of $99 million for an apartment complex. So I'm really ecstatic to see how this project is going to play out. And I hope that with the start of this that we could possibly see more projects of this magnitude. Giving people the idea of having a single-family house or a multi-dwelling complex, but that owner-occupied, single owner-occupied type housing more in the city. So I applaud you and commend you, and I wish you the best of luck. And I would like to see the tour before, after, and during. So congratulations on this proposal, and I think it's wonderful. So thank you, guys.
All right. The rest of the votes, 2 and 6. Thank you.
9 yeas adopted.
That closes the public hearing. We have no other properties. Next order of business, public comment period. We have 2 people signed up this evening. The first is Jay McFarland. Please come forward. Common Council has provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Certainly.
Please state your name for the record. You may begin.
Jay McFarland. I'm glad that you people can see me finally. It's been a rough 2 years. I've been very sick. And now I have got my, hopefully I got all of my faculties about me so that I can make some speeches here so that we can go forward. My father-in-law passed away about 4 days ago. It was John Zampano. He had 10 children. He went from one end of Mohawk Street to the other, literally from his life. He had 10 children. We had many. They were all here for the funeral. He started Avico Distributing, which actually his father-in-law started, Italiano. And we've had the spices here. I worked for them for a few years before they fired me. But that's another story, because, what's that? You remember that, right, Joe? So, but we made a big impression onto Utica. He had 10 children. He had 2 physicians, 1 pharmacist, a couple engineers. I don't know what the other ones do for a living, but one's a postman. And 2 run the business. So, but he cooperated for Utica. He loved Utica, and I just wanted to, pass it on that with anybody that had 10 children, and anybody's nuts to get married into that family, but I did. So, and I've been with my wife for 42 years. So, me saying that, mate, I know that. We're going to miss John, and he made a lot of things for Utica, and hopefully my brother-in-laws will keep the business going, because the wholesale business is not easy anymore. As you know, the prices have gone right through the roof. I mean, I used to sell Don Pepino for $18.50, and now I think it's up to $37 a case. So I don't know how these pizza parlors are going to send the prices, but a few people in this room would love for me to drop dead, but I am going to continue to live and put thorns in your sides, because I'd like to have a transportation museum down here in Utica. I've not gotten any help with the county either for our trains. We have an excellent position down there. Utica is well known, and when I go out for the National Railroad Historical Society and throughout the world, we are known for our engine that we've had down there. I know a lot of people know that you guys can go to Chicago overnight. It leaves here at 8:30 at night, and you can be in Chicago in the morning right here in the trains in Utica. And you can get to New York 3 times a day. But we should do more of that transportation museum down there. There's a lot of things that we can do, but I do not want any government support. All I do is want the positions so that I don't have to go through the hoops like we did for the Adirondack Railroad. I mean, we started up there in 92, and if I told you what the state did to us and to myself and to Rich, because Rich helped me, we started that, and it was very, very hard to just start that thing there, and we had 62,000 people the first year. Is that right, Rich? Thank you. And we were only budgeted for 12,000 people. So I can do it. Utica is a great place to have people stop here, and they'd love to spend their money here. And even I could have a hotel for the station down there. In Nashville, you go down there, the hotel rate down there in Nashville is $511 on a Monday night. On the weekend, it goes up to $775, okay? This is just at a railroad station, but we can do it, so. I see the chief is watching the time here, so did I go over the time of 3 minutes?
The time's a little loose now with the new rules. However, you've been talking for about 5.
Okay, I apologize, but I could talk more, and peace be with you, and see you in church.
Thank you, thank you. It's always appreciated, Mr. McFarland. The second and final speaker this evening is Tom Carcone, President of Local 32, IAFF. The Common Council's provided you a copy of Section 3244, Public Comment Period Rule. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes.
Please state your name and you may begin.
Tom Carcone. Just wanted to sum up some of the stuff that was said tonight. The insurance issue is not a fire issue. It's not a police issue. It doesn't belong in portions of discussion tonight. It's all employees. If they're forced to go back to a fully funded plan, all employees must go back to a fully funded plan. You cannot run both self-funded and fully funded laterally. So when you're talking about it, it's a citywide issue. It's not just a fire department issue or a police issue. The healthcare committee, no, we do not participate in the healthcare committee because there is no healthcare committee. It was disbanded in 2012 and it hasn't been intact since then. When we did have a healthcare committee, I will tell you that we've never had an increase in double digits on the healthcare costs for the city of Utica. Every year that the unions and the union presidents managed the healthcare for the city of Utica, we were able to keep those increases under 10%. This year, you faced a 30% increase. The first year that the city was able to set their own premium costs. So just put that in perspective and let that sit in. That 30% increase was misspoken today, but yes, it exists. It brought our budget from 9 million to 11 million, and at the last healthcare dictation, because that's what it is, because it's no longer a committee where they dictate information and dictate premium increases, they also said it was going to be from 11 million, or 9 to 11 is what it went. It will go from 11 to 14 or 15 if it's moved back to a fully funded. I received that from other union representatives. Yes, we do share information, and I don't think they lie to me. Josh, you wouldn't lie to me, would you? No. Okay. And when I asked if Heather was there, when Bill Klein said that, I was told she was sitting right next to him. So maybe it's 1.5 million now. That's still a 5% increase. That's unnecessary if they just deal in good faith, which the arbitrator in our last grievance, which identified it as us being at a disadvantage at the table, which we were. To clear it up, Corporation Counsel has never attended one of our negotiation sessions, neither has the mayor. Yet she references Corporation Counsel as the reference on what's going on in our contract negotiations. And the mayor hasn't even sat in on one. So, Mr. DeBrango, I'd love to have those negotiations right here in front of the council if you so wish, because we got nothing to hide. We're trying to get a deal done for the city. We're trying to save you the mess that Corporation Counsel did handle. They did handle the grievance. We did give them notification. We would protect our CBA at the time that they went to self-insurance. They ignored us. Big surprise. And then they lost the grievance, which puts us in this predicament, not your firefighters. We gave them fair warning. They ignored it. They moved forward. So I hope this doesn't get placed on us. This cannot be awarded in IAMA. What can be awarded is impact from the disadvantage that they put us in contract negotiations. In May, the interest arbitration on our contract could award us more money because we were at disadvantage during the contract. She gave a December 31st before they have to go fully funded because she didn't want to deny the arbitrator the opportunity to give us that impact increase in potential payouts from the arbitration case. She did maintain jurisdiction until February to make sure that the city does go back to the fully funded plan before December 31st. Mr. Beatrice, you hit the nail on the head. After they start a renewal on April 1st, it runs from April 1st to April 1st. They cannot change mid-renewal period. And on January 1st, they'll be in contempt of the decision of the arbitration award, and it will be dumped on the next mayor. So the concern is zero. So you should be paying attention to that because you're going to be in that shape without being able to go back to fully funded with 6 months of violation of that award. Other than that, and all of this is secondary and irrelevant, and you guys look over money all day long. You weigh on what's important to spend money on. Well, we haven't invested anything into the safety of our firefighters. The maintenance to the firehouses, a safer grant that's paid for by the federal government, a grant for a new station is not investment. You're looking for free money. maintenance on our fire trucks that are worn down and beaten, our fire stations, repairs that are worse than the lowest of the low properties in Utica that we inspect. That's not investment. That's maintenance that's been neglected. And you weigh that into your budget, and there's actually been no investment for additional staffing or additional safety in our service that is so necessary today. And all of this stuff is important, but all of it is secondary to safety. So what I want to end on tonight is, our brothers in Local 282, Buffalo, New York. A lot of them are close friends of mine as a state representative. They lost one of their members today, in a terrible, terrible accident at a fourth alarm fire. They couldn't find him at first, and then when they did, he made the ultimate sacrifice. So whatever God it is you pray to tonight, I'd ask you to keep him and our brothers and sisters out there in your thoughts and prayers. And remember that there's something bigger than budget, there's something bigger than money, and there's something bigger in our lives than what we argue about day in and day out. That's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Carcone. I have to request the floor. All right, there's a motion.
Wait a minute, can we have his name?
Well, hold on. There's a motion to extend the public comment period. Do we have a second? Okay, any opposed? All right, please come forward. Thank you. I have to process it. I apologize, but rules are the rules.
I understand. Thank you, Mike.
Please state your name.
My name is Richard Bawes. I'm with the Railway Historical. Richard Bawes with the Railway Historical Society.
Hold on, just one moment. The Common Council's provided you a copy of Section 3244 Public Comment Period Rule. It's on the podium right there. Are you in agreement with this?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and you may begin.
Yes, my name is Richard Bawes. I'm one of the board members for the Utica chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. Earlier this evening, I didn't get a chance to get into the signing portion. I presented to Mr. Burmaster and Mr. Aiello there a concept plan for what we call the Schuyler Street Tower restoration project. Over the years, the Utica chapter of the Railway Historical Society it's been like the custodians of the tower. It's kind of a West Utica landmark there on Schuyler Street. And I've been myself, as a carpenter, have restored it about 2006. And currently, right now, it's in a process of aging, like all of us. So my proposal back is called the Streetscape for Schuyler Street and the Tower Project for restoration of the curb line and the sidewalks down through, which there will be a podium set up at the base of the tower, describing the purpose of the Schuyler Street Tower and how it impacted the area. Also, with the restoration of the sidewalk and curbing, be a request for closure of Sickenberger Lane, and that area there will be graded back on off. We probably would take and get a couple of railroad wheel sets and turn them into park benches. And well, also the other amenities would probably be a good size area for maybe a spruce Christmas tree to be planted with electrical connection, and a few other railroad memorabilia, signage, and so forth. The tower is one of four that's still left in the upper area here, being Norwich, Cortland, and Homer are the other three locations. The tower itself protected the traffic and controlled the signals at Whitesboro, Lafayette, Court Street, and Warren Street as the trains would arrive and depart out of Utica on the Delaware-Lackawanna Western Railroad. Our chapter ran numerous excursions down through here with the Susquehanna Railroad. Susquehanna Railroad is going to be cooperating with the restoration of the tower. The tower is going to come off its pedestal, and with the generosity of the people down at Sculpture Space, they're going to help us do a little restoration on it, and then we'll restore it back up on top. Local businesses are sponsoring us, JK Lumber, Jonas Kelly, Sculpture Space, Tom and George down there. So we do have a lot of backing on that, and we hopefully that if funding can be found for the streetscape part of it, I think we can turn this little approach back into the brewery district into something to see. And on another further note, yes, the steam engine down over at Utica Station, I brought that back here in 1999. And I just finished completing the window restoration on that engine. So that project there is going to be lit up later on this year. But all it's remaining is it's electrical work. So when you look over the bridge as you go north and you look down, you'll see it all lit up. But for now, my project concern is, and focus will be on the Schuyler Street project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so just since this was a little bit out of the norm, you presented this, that's what the folders were?
I gave them, yes, I gave
All right,
them.
so do you have electronic copies of that? Electronic copies of everything that's in the folder?
Yeah.
All right, could you please clerk@cityofutica.com, if you could send all that to the clerk, and then I'd like to request that one of those copies can be given to the clerk, so this could be distributed to the council as a whole this evening. Thanks. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Very cool. All right, that ends public comment period. We have no common council guests, but I would kind of qualify the tower project as a common council guest. That's some good stuff. It's a landmark in its own right. We don't have communications from the mayor this evening. Reports from the city officers. Stephanie DiGiorgio, Corporation Counsel.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Chief Ingersoll.
No, I'd just like to second President Carcone's concern for our Buffalo firefighters. It was a terrible tragedy. I've been watching the news clips, and it was absolutely horrible.
Deputy Chief Noonan.
We joked a little bit, but I do, on a serious note, I want to apologize on behalf of the chief, myself, Captain Banzer. We thought, for whatever reason, that this, our budget hearing was next week. We started preparing for it today, actually, and, you know, the chief and Captain definitely would have been here had we known, so.
Somehow the memo you're referring to ended up at the top of my inbox too.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, there was a date
Right.
change. And
Yes,
I put
there
it in.
was.
There wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that,
I'm just letting you know.
with all due
Yeah.
respect, I mean, if you
Yeah.
prepared some budget information, I think that
We
if you
started
do want
preparing
to.
No, they
just for
started
anticipated-
just today.
No, I know, but I'm
Anticipated
saying, like,
questions.
if
I mean,
you,
if you had more questions for
if
us,
you
we'd be happy
wanted to
come back.
present whatever you had, maybe in an email, and we'll give them a couple of times, you know, a couple of minutes, if you do have anything that you wanted to touch base, I don't see why, whatever information you gathered together,
All right.
you know, we would be more
Anything
than
else
willing
this
to
evening?
accept it.
Anything else?
No, that's it, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Everyone else has run for the hills. Many people were here. We appreciate everyone's attendance earlier. The engineering staff was here, codes was here, etc. We don't have a cash report this evening, do we? All right, moving on to petitions, remonstrances, and appeals. District 1, Katie Aiello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Richard, thank you for coming and presenting and doing all the work on the Schuyler streetscape will be great. And I think the East Utica Neighborhood Association meeting will be Monday, March 6th, 6 o'clock, I believe. Don't go me on that part, but double check if you would like to be there at Chancellor Apartments. Thank you. That is all tonight.
Thanks. Second District, Councilman Burmaster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm really excited about the HTPC taking over the vacant lot on the top of Gray Ave and Capitol. Being a lifetime resident, I was born on Capitol. The building that used to be there was an old Ducks back. They stored coats in there and whatnot. And when I was a kid, yeah, it was a gold. You're right. And when I was 5 years old, I used to play in the building, and we used to get syringes, and they were squirt guns. And, you know, I mean, it just brings back a lot of memories, and I'm excited that this piece of property that's doing nothing but looking sore, they're willing to take this adventure. They they did take over the 4 pieces of property on Noy Street across from the auto place that I guess belonged to the rescue mission, and because of new people taking over the rescue, they kind of dropped the ball and they picked it up. They're finishing those 4 homes as well, and I just love to see new things in West Utica because it's refreshing. I wanna reach out to the west side. They're having the meeting next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock down to 5 Stars, and it's if you get a chance, and you know, Ann and Mr. Testa Anthony there, they do a nice job at these meetings, and they're very informative. You get a chance to come down, spend an hour, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm looking forward to the project over on Schuyler. You know, a couple sidewalks, a couple curbing. I'm hoping I got money left in my ARPA money, because I don't think I spent the $200,000, and I'm hoping that I can help them get this sidewalk and beautify the west side, and baby steps. Just bring it back, and I guess that's all I have tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. 3rd District, Councilperson Friend, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This last week, I took up a suggestion from Stephanie Highland to take a tour of the Utica Fire Academy, and I went down, and Assistant Chief Noon and Captain Polio gave me a really thorough tour and kind of tutorial, really, on sort of how the whole Fire Academy works, and I was really impressed. People come for 14 weeks, a full semester, live at the academy 5 days, 5 nights during that 14-week period, go to MVCC every day. They end up with 32 credits towards an associate's degree in fire protection. What's the actual name of the degree?
Fire protection.
Technology?
Yeah, technology.
Yeah. So it was really cool to be down there. Of course, there are beautiful old fire engines down there, the ones that were pulled by horses, by the chief's great-grandfather, and an even smaller one that was pulled by human beings, a tiny little pump thing.
It's actually one of the oldest antique fire apparatus in the country.
Right, and Captain Polio was telling me that he restored it. It came back from the Children's Museum, and it was kind of in need of refurbishment, and he took that project on. So it was really a great learning experience, and left me feeling really proud of Utica. I already feel proud of Utica, but it's a fire training academy that people come from all over the state in order to go to our academy, and it's very well thought of, and people leave with sort of permanent positive memories of their time at the academy, and I was really impressed by all that. So a big shout out to Captain Polio and Assistant Chief Noon for their time and explaining all that to me. Yeah, it's a great thing. So that's all I have tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. 4th District, and Majority Leader, Councilman Mioli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to thank, just a shout out to the DPW. We had some nasty ice, we had some nasty snow. They did a great job keeping up with it. The roads were done very well, and I know I'm out 3:30 in the morning, so I see them, and they're out there pushing that snow. They're putting it to the sides and keeping our city streets very safe. So once again, I'd like to thank the DPW for all their hard work. Secondly, I'd also like to thank Mr. Jimmy Boswell for bringing all these signs to our attention. And in addition to that, the legwork of our Deputy Clerk, Andrew Catali, because he was checking on for all of us. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Mr. President, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. 5th District, Dennis Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. President. If anybody hasn't been down through Johnson Park, it looks like a war zone. I got pictures. They've torn down 2 houses so far, dug up one lot, and they almost have it ready to rebuild a new house. All this is being done by Johnson Park Center. I was over there screaming at them today, tearing down one house because I wanted the windows, and they just went ahead and tore it down anyway. So I just gave up after a while, but it's completely being redone, and I think they're gonna rebuild the houses up from the ground and put a community center in. And the big lot leading in from Leah Street to Johnson Park is completely, all of the buildings are gone. So that's where the 60 to 72 unit housing complex for seniors and other people is gonna be situated. So a lot of people were freaking out because everybody thought the building was on fire. But the fire department was over there practicing on the building that they were gonna tear down. And I kept telling them, well, the fire department's right there. The people that came and told me. That's what the fire department's right there. What are you calling me for? And they were actually over there doing an exercise.
We were very appreciative that we were able to get into those buildings.
Well, you had to leave one time.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got
we
a
actually
call,
had another- we
and you
actually
left
had
the
a real
building
fire
smoking,
accident
so.
twice, yeah. Yes, yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So, I think that's all. Thank you, Deputy Chief Noonan for, High Street, doing that so fast. The neighbors were ready to get me, so thank you.
All right. Thank you. 6th District, Councilman Joe Beatrice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just got a couple of things I want to get off my chest tonight. So we got 3 candidates for mayor here, and I would assume maybe Mr. Cardello is listening, and if he's not, first I want to wish all of you very good luck. Secondly, whoever gets to that big seat up there, a couple things I would really hope that you guys push to and work on. And the number one thing is communication with your department heads and the people that work for you, showing them how to return emails, how to call people back. Because you guys, and I'm sure you all know, you're going to be in that seat because the people elected you. And they deserve a phone call back, regardless if it's a tough phone call or if it's we're giving you something, okay? The tough phone calls are the hardest ones, but those are the ones that need to be made, okay? And same thing even with us as council people. You know what? There's a lot of questions that I come and I'll ask and I'll set up this, and you have to hem and haw. And I know I worked in the private sector for 41 years, and I would have lost my job if I didn't return an email, return a phone call, and, et cetera. So that's the only thing I'm going to ask of anybody. It's too late for anything to change with 10 months to go now. But that's something this is going on my 4th year, that really bothers me, that you can't get an email return. And it's not everybody, but there's a lot of stuff that you can't get done. Secondly, I just want to talk about North Utica. We're back on to we always were, but we have a new group running the North Utica meetings on Monday night. They're the 4th Monday of every month from 6:30 to 7:30. I'm there, and Tony Leone, the legislator, is there from 5:30 to 6:30 beforehand. There's a lot of times people like to see one-on-one and don't want to speak up in public. I am going to be talking to the hospital. I asked you guys before, but it's getting to the point now where it's probably worth going to take a tour. So I am going to organize that, and if any of you are interested, just contact me. I'd like you to all come with me. If nobody comes with me, I'm going to go myself. And last thing, to the people out there listening, it's signature season, and I know in the world that we live in today, people don't like to answer their door, and they're relatively nervous if strangers are there. But take a little time if somebody's knocking at your door. Look out your window, because we all are out there knocking on doors, and we know how difficult it is to get people to answer the doors. So I'd appreciate that I'm sure all you guys will too, because I'm sure everybody's out there. So thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thanks. Minority Leader and Council at Large, Mark Williamson, you have the floor.
Apparently everybody's got the gift of gab today, so I have nothing to pass, thank you.
All right. Council at Large, Samantha Claus will testify.
I've always got the gift of gab, so no, I'm just kidding. I want to really briefly say, and I took up everybody's time for the 3 hours that we were here prior to the start of this council meeting, but I want to say that I apologize that if I get a little facetious at times, but this is my 10th budget that I've gone through. And if I have a question and I'm not getting the answer that I want, it's not that I'm repeating myself to aggravate anybody. It's because I truly don't understand the answer to the question that I'm getting. This budget is a very thorough process, and I appreciate the time that everybody takes, and I apologize if people get angry with me, but unfortunately, this is my job, and I take it quite seriously. So with that said, that's all I've got tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Council at Large, President Pro Temp, Frank DeBrango, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple things. I know Jay McFarland, he's always showing up at our meetings. I wish him well. I know he wasn't feeling good. I don't know what the issue was, but I'm glad he's up on his feet and attending the meetings, and I'm sorry for the loss in his family as well. The second thing is, Danielle's at Valley View. I mean, I've been there many, many a times. I think Jeff is pretty fair. His quality product, he made it what it was. I was there 20 years, and I would just certainly hope that when the time comes to accept, for bidding on it, I would just certainly hope he would really think about bidding on it again, because he did have a very good product. He kept the place neat and clean. Everybody felt comfortable there, and I just hope that he would consider bidding on it again, because you never know, you might be able to get that bid and get back in business in a brand new place. I heard the mayor say that they won't be, obviously they're going to miss a little beat there. The place may not get done before golf season starts, but hopefully they can have some place set up temporarily over there to accommodate some golfers and tournaments and things of that nature. So I know they'll be working on it. I'm sure they're working on it with the people that run the golf course as well. So I'm sure we can make a temporary setup, but I hope that Jeff Daniels decides to bid on this again, because he did deliver a very good product to the people. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. I have nothing this evening. Enough has been said. Moving on to legislation. I'm going to read every piece word for word tonight. I'm kidding.
I'm a fast reader. I'm happy to help.
All right. The first ordinance is ordinance number 1. It's an ordinance authorizing the sale and/or disposal of surplus city equipment. It's sponsored by the minority and majority leaders. We have a motion to move it. Celeste Friend. Second from Miola. Be it ordained pursuant to section 7.007 of the Utica Charter, the mayor or his authorized representative is hereby authorized to sell the city-owned personal property described below, etc. Further ordained, the property to be sold and or disposed is described as follows. It's Department of Public Works, multiple pieces of equipment, and Parks Department, other multiple equipments, including trucks, litter vacs, etc. This has been reviewed in detail at the pre-meeting conference. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you very much. The next piece is sponsored by Councilmember Irvin. Is there a second? Okay, seconds from Miola. This is calling for a public hearing on the sale of 1144 Dudley Avenue. The public hearing is called for March 15th, 2023 at 7 p.m. This is from the Urban Renewal Agency to Erasmo Rodriguez and Karina Elizabeth. Your votes in the public hearing.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you. The paired ordinance number 3 is the ordinance approving the designation of Erasmo Rodriguez and Karina Elizabeth as an eligible and qualified project sponsor pursuant to Article 15 of GML for the purpose of the sale of 1144 Dudley Avenue.
Motion to commit, please, Mr. President.
Second for Miola. Any opposed? Same committee. Proposed resolution number 4 is calling for a public hearing on the sale of 318.74-4-42.2 Johnson Square. This is from URA to the JCTOD Outreach Incorporated, DBA Johnson Park Center. This is a sum of $250. Public hearing will be called March 15th at 7 p.m. Your votes. Sponsored by Urban, second from Friend. Your votes.
Excuse me. 9 yeas adopted.
All right, the next piece, again, sponsored by Councilmember Urban. This is ordinance number 5.
I'd like to make a motion to commit, please, Mr. President.
Second from Aiello. Any opposed? It's in committee. Next piece is sponsored by Councilmember Aiello. Second from Viola. Calling for a public hearing on the sale of 767 Rucker Street and 905 Belmont Avenue. This is from the Urban Renewal Agency to Gordana Beslik for a sum of $30,000. Public hearing to be held March 15th, 7 p.m. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Ordinance number 7 is the paired ordinance. We have a mo-
Make a motion to commit?
All right.
Second.
From Burmaster. Anyone opposed? Ordinance 7 is in committee. Next piece is sponsored by Councilmember Urban, calling for a public hearing on the sale of 1649 Nielsen Street for a sum of $55,000. Again, March 15th, 7 p.m. This is from the URA to Mo Kia and Halala Win. Motion from Miola, or second from Miola. Your votes. You good?
Nine yeas adopted.
Proposed ordinance 9 is the paired ordinance to sell 1649 Nielsen Street.
Motion to commit, please, Mr. President.
Second from Burmaster. Any opposed? It's been committed. And now to all of our traffic legislation. I think there's a couple things in the middle, but I don't know.
That's fine.
All right, ordinance number 10, sponsored by Councilmember Urban. Do we have a second? Second from Aiello. No parking at all times, be it ordained in section 216, 360, Schedule E.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I have a motion to amend,
All right.
to change, Addington Street to Addington Place.
Second on that motion, Mr. President.
Any opposed to the amendment? Okay, the amendment passes. High Street, East Side, 1529 High Street, from Addington Place to telephone pole number 3-4. Be rescinded. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Proposed ordinance 11, also sponsored by Urban. Second from Miola. No parking at all times. Be it ordained in section 216, 360, Schedule E. No parking at all times. High Street, both sides, from 1529 High Street to James Street. Be rescinded. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Ordinance number 12, sponsored by Urban. Second from Miola. No parking at all times. High Street East Side from Addington Place to James Street. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Ordinance 13, no parking at all times, sponsored by Urban. Second from Miola. High Street West Side from 1526 High Street to James Street. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Proposed resolution number 14 is Commissioner of Deeds. Would someone move this? Miola. Second from Friend. Be it resolved, the Common Council does hereby approve the following person eligible for appointment to Commissioner of Deeds in and for the city of Utica, New York, within the term ending December 31st, 2024. It's Gina P. Habaika. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Next piece is resolution number 15.
Mr.
Resolution
Mr.
authorizing
President?
adjustment to the solid waste charge.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the Thursday rule for this and any necessary subsequent legislation.
Second from Miola. Any opposed? Okay, the Thursday rule has been waived. This is a resolution authorizing adjustment to the 2022-23 solid waste service charge. Be it resolved, the Common Council of the City of Utica hereby approves the application for adjustment to the City of Utica solid waste service charge for fiscal year 2022-2023 as follows. There's an attached list. Miola, second. Friend, your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Next piece is sponsored by Aiello. It's ordinance number 16, rescind and replace designation of official newspaper.
Mr. President, I'd like to place a motion to commit.
Second from Burmaster. Any opposed? It's in committee. Tom left for that one. You see that? All right. Proposed ordinance 17, sponsored by Aiello. Intersections where stops are required. Second from Miola. Be it ordained that section 216-358 Schedule C, intersections where stops are required. Francis Street, Plain Street, northwest and southeast corners. Francis Street, Plain Street to control traffic on Plain Street. Be rescinded. Your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
You, resolution number 18, this shouldn't be a resolution, it's an ordinance. It's in the packet that way, sorry. Intersections where stops required, sponsored by Aiello, second from Miola. Be it ordained, section 216-358, Schedule C, intersections where stops required, to be amended to include the following: Blanche Street, Francis Street, four-way stop at each intersection. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 19, sponsored by Miola. Is there a second? Friend? Be it ordained, section 216-358, Schedule C, intersections where stops required, Clementon Street, Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Clementon Street. It's amended. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Next piece is sponsored by Irvin. Ordinance 20.
Second.
Second from Aiello. This is intersections where stops required. Be amended. Brinkerhoff Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Brinkerhoff Avenue. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Next piece is sponsored by Miola. Intersections where stops required. Second from DeBrango. This is amended to include the following: Conkling Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Conkling Avenue. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Proposed ordinance 22, sponsored by Irvin. Second from Miola. Be it ordained that section 216-358, Schedule C, intersections where stops required, be amended to include the following: Dudley Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Dudley Avenue. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Sponsored by Irvin. Ordinance 23, second from Miola. Be it ordained, intersections where stops required, be amended. Kemble Street and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Kemble Street. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 24, Councilmember Irvin. Be it ordained, section 216-358, intersection stops required, be amended. Miller Street, Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Miller Street. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
If I'm not calling the motion in second, it's because the clerk next to me is recording it and watching it. Just
I
so
got her
everyone
eyes.
knows.
She goes,
All right.
uh-huh.
Ordinance number 25, Councilmember Viola. Second. Aiello. Be it ordained, section 216-358, again, intersections where stops required. St. Agnes Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of St. Agnes Avenue. It's another amendment.
Did Jim Buswell have anything to do with all this? He did.
Oh, you didn't listen.
9 E's adopted.
Next piece, ordinance 26, sponsored by Viola. Second?
We got it.
All right, Williamson is the second. Be it ordained, intersection where stops required, St. Jane Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of St. Jane Avenue. That section is being amended to include. Your votes. There we go again.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 27, intersections where stops required. This one's Urban, second from Viola. We're going to amend 216-358 to include the following: Taylor Avenue and Pleasant Street, northwest corner of Taylor Avenue. For those of you who are watching, this is because there's tons of stop signs that are not legislated.
I'm gonna make a law that you
Yeah.
can only do 5 stop signs at a council meeting.
Call the vote. We need a couple votes here. 1, 2, and 3.
6, 9.
9, 8. There we go.
9 E's adopted.
All right. Ordinance 28, sponsored by Urban. Second from Miola. Be it ordained, section 216-358, be amended to include the following: West Street, Pleasant Street, northwest corner of West Street. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Thank you. Ordinance 29, Councilmember Urban. Second from Miola. Intersections where stops required. Be it ordained that section 216-358, Schedule C, intersections where stops required, be amended to include the following: Dudley Avenue and Jane Street, southwest and northwest corner of Dudley Avenue. Your votes. 6.
Joey Cole.
9 E's adopted.
Thank you. Proposed ordinance 30, sponsored by Urban. Viola's the second on that. Be it ordained 216-358, be amended. Howard Avenue and Jane Street, southeast and northwest corners of Howard Avenue. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
So just for future reference, I was talking to the clerk about this earlier. It's always a discussion point, can we put things in a block, et cetera, et cetera. We can't do them if they're separate, right? But if we're amending a section
Okay.
and it's a contiguous piece, review it with the judge. But if this is just adding one whole section, we should discuss with the Corporation Council and the judge, because this could have been done in one piece, because it's one piece that's being amended.
It's
It's not like
amended to the
it's not a strike and replace, et cetera, et cetera.
Like, you
In
know, we did
case
it, they told me I did
Jim's
it
driving
wrong,
around
and
and we
then
add
they had to
another
do it,
30
so it
stop
was
signs to
great.
the
Okay, well,
legislation.
It's
All right.
That'd be
Sorry.
good. That'd be
Then you'll
good.
have to do it 4 more times.
Just throwing it out there.
He's telling you no.
Or, ordinance 31, Irvin, second from Miola.
All right, I make a motion to vote on the rest of the block.
You can't vote on them as a block, they're separate pieces, that's the problem. Section 216-358, amended to include the following: Miller Avenue and James Street, southeast and northwest corners of Miller Avenue.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 32, this is an amendment to 216-358, sponsored by Miola. Ayala's the second. St. Agnes and James Street, southeast corner of St. Agnes Avenue. Your votes.
9 E's adopted.
Another Miola. Second from Colosimo Testa. 216-358 be amended to read as follows: St. Jane Avenue and James Street, southeast corner of St. Jane Avenue. Your votes. Technically, that was a strike
9
and
E's
replace.
adopted.
Oh, man, that one?
Oh.
Want me to do it?
No,
Want me
it's
to
okay.
motion?
It did say amended as
It's only
follows.
when it's me keeping.
Ordinance number 34, Councilman Miola, intersections where stops required. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Colosimo Testa, Sulzer Place, James Street, southeast corner of Sulzer Place.
9 E's adopted.
Ordinance 35, sponsored by Miola, second from DeBranco, I see it up. Section 216-358 be amended to include the following: Taylor Avenue and James Street, southeast and northwest corners of Taylor Avenue. Your votes. All right, we got 47 more.
Same.
Come on.
Same, get a vote, same. Mark.
9 E's adopted.
Proposed ordinance number 36, Councilmember Urban, second from Burmaster. This is amending 216-358 to include West Street and James Street, southeast and northwest corners of West Street. Your votes.
Oh, wait, don't go anywhere. We got one more.
Yeah, we got one more. Don't worry. Frank, we got one more person to vote on this one.
9 E's adopted.
All right, we have one more piece.
We just gotta
Do
make
not
a,
need the Thursday ruling, but it was already waived.
we just gotta make
Neil was
a,
moving it.
wait, no, we
Second
can't,
from Williamson.
oh, we got a new copy with the correct name?
We got
Okay.
one.
Yeah, why have I got 2 of these?
Because the name's spelled wrong.
Back.
Just read them to the record, Mr.
So I'm
President.
gonna read this into the record. You do have the correct spelling on the second piece for handed, yes. Proposed resolution number 37 is Commissioner of Deeds. Be it resolved, Common Council does hereby approve the following person eligible for appointment to Commissioner of Deeds in and for the city of Utica, New York, within the term ending December 31st, 2024. It is Thomas Murata. Your votes.
The famous Thomas.
Friend was the second.
The only other thing that I have left
9
for
E's
today
adopted.
All right.
is just to schedule a committee meeting for the healthcare committee and just invite everybody. We have a quorum. I think it was myself, Mrs. Ayel, Mrs. Friend, Mr. Irving, and Mark Williamson for Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And just notify the proper authorities to attend that meeting.
Okay.
Tuesday at 5. Thank you.
Tuesday at 5. Have fun.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.